question from those of us on teleconference. Is there an update?
Yeah, like what the hell?
I think we're getting there, guys.
Thanks for your
Is it
patience.
just technical?
Yeah, it was technical with regards to the YouTube stream, and that got worked out right now. So we're just waiting for the mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Why, was he fixing the problem?
He's going to unplug it and then plug it back in. And we're good.
It took the mayor to flip the switch. He had that special mayor's key.
Good. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the City Council meeting from Monday, June the 1st. We'll start with the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also the home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. We'll now move on to bouquets. Actually, we'll do the roll call now. Thank you.
Councillor Campbell.
Present.
Councillor Carlson.
Present.
Councillor Croson.
Present.
Councillor Higgin. Councillor Morrow. Councillor Miyashiro.
Here.
Acting Mayor Parker.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Present.
Mayor Spearman.
Present. Now we'll move on to bouquets. Deputy Mayor Kaufman. Okay, Acting Mayor Parker. Okay, Councillor Morrow. Councillor Croson.
Thank you, Your Worship. On a light note, I just want to say happy birthday to our neighbors to the west. The town of Coalhurst is celebrating their 25 years as a town. They became a town on the 1st of June. And so it is their 25th birthday as a town, and they have a new logo, which is wonderful. It's very historic, so quite nice. So if you haven't seen their new logo, check it out, and happy birthday to Coalhurst.
Done. Very neighborly. Councillor Higgin. Okay. Councillor Campbell.
Nothing, sir.
Councillor Miyashiro.
Thanks, Mayor Spearman. Again, I'd like to thank the 139 people that are working on a initiative to help for the social helping organizations in the city of Lethbridge as our COVID response. There's about 50 different organizations continuing to work together for the betterment of our community, and we shared 166 messages last night and shared about 11 different files. And I think overall we've shared 3,000 messages between us to help improve service delivery to our community. I'd like to thank Lori Harrison from Culture and Recreation for helping shepherd that effort.
Well done. Thank you. Councillor Carlson.
Nothing at this time, Your Worship.
Okay. I would like to thank the community and for their patience as we continue to progress through the recovery process and thank everyone who is supporting and working safely or playing safely and maintaining physical distancing and ensuring that others in our community are protected. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I have a resolution from Deputy Mayor Kaufman. Be it resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of City Council held Tuesday, May the 19th be approved, and that the Mayor and the City Clerk be authorized to sign the same. And further be it resolved that City Council receive the following as information. First, the Council referral list, and second, Transit Operational Review presentation. And further be it resolved that City Council give first reading to the following bylaw. Bylaw 6229, Temporary Deferral of Utility Payments. Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Members of Council will see in the consent agenda we have the City Council referral list. Should just point out that the City Manager's not had the time yet to actually go through that to try to check or correct dates as are proposed on there. So hopefully by the next regular meeting he'll be able to do that. And just a reminder, the community bylaw 6229 is actually just first reading of the bylaw that looks at deferring utility payments for eligible City of Lethbridge utility customers for charges incurred between March 18th, 2020 and June 18th, 2020. So second reading will be coming up in, and I don't have the date on my sheet. Second reading will be 29th? June 19th, June 20th. The next meeting at council, I'm assuming. Is that correct? 15th? Thank you very much. Second and third reading should be on the 15th. If there are any questions, I'll entertain those now. Otherwise, I'll call the question.
Any questions from council? I see none. Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? I see none. We now have a resolution to adopt the agenda from Acting Mayor Parker, that the agenda of the regular City Council meeting of June the 1st, 2020 be adopted, including all communications as submitted by the City Clerk. City Clerk, are there any changes?
Yes, Your Worship, there's a couple. We're adding to the in-camera agenda item 10.7, Boards, Commissions, and Committee Matter number 2, verbal. And as well, you may have noticed that items 6.1 and 6.2 had proposed on them. They are rescinding motions, and rescinding motions require notice. So we require 2/3 affirmative votes of the members present today, that'd be 6, to waive the requirement for notice and add them to this agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Deputy, Acting Mayor Parker.
There's nothing else outside of what the City Clerk, I would just call the question.
Okay, that the June the 1st, 2020 agenda be adopted as amended, including all communications as submitted by the City Clerk.
Question?
All in favor? Any opposed? I see none. Thank you. I'd like to express apologies to those who were waiting to view the meeting. We were half an hour late starting due to technical difficulties. Okay, we are now going to move on to 4.1, the 2022 Briar bid. Can we invite our presenters into the council meeting, please? Welcome. Please move up to the podium and introduce yourselves. Yeah. Maintain physical distancing as much as you can. Thank you.
Thank you. Your Worship, City of Lethbridge Councillors, City Administration, thank you for allowing us to present to you today. My name is Mike Mulroy, past President and Director of the Lethbridge Curling Club. Together with Kirk Mearns, General Manager of the Curling Club, we formed the bid committee looking to be successful in bringing the 2022 Briar to Lethbridge. Before I begin, I'd like to recognize our supporters here today, some in person and others joining virtually, given the unique times we find ourselves in. From the Lethbridge Hurricanes, Terry Hoosman and Peter Anholt. Becky Little and Kim Galucci from the NMAC Center. Frank Spadavecchia Service Sports Center. Susan Iman from the Lethbridge Sports Council. Shilpa Stalker, Bruce Primo from visitlethbridge.com. Tourism Lethbridge. And virtually Trish Jackson, president of the Lethbridge Curling Club, its board of directors, and its members. The Brier, simply put, is one of the greatest sporting championships we have in Canada. Arguably, it's the largest championship that cities the size of Lethbridge are still capable of hosting. Only 3 cities in Canada have ever hosted all of the Big Four championships in curling, and we look to put Lethbridge on that exclusive list. Having hosted all of the Big Four championships in curling, having hosted the 07 Scotties, the 2012 World Women's, the 2017 World Seniors and World Mixed Doubles, and most recently, as you'll all remember, with overwhelming success, the 2019 World Men's Championships. The Brier remains the last jewel in the crown for our community. In the presentation package, together with support from Curling Alberta, you'll see letters of support from all of the organizations I thanked earlier. The Brier is truly promising to be a community event like no other in Lethbridge. The support of the community organizations is paramount to the success of being awarded this prestigious championship.
Thanks, Mike. Mr. Mayor, councillors, and city administration, I just want to quickly look at the benefits, both direct and indirect, of a Brier. I don't think we can overstate the impact of TSN airing 75 hours of live coverage over 10 days, with the city of Lethbridge being both figuratively and literally at the center of that coverage. Over 7.5 million viewers watched the 2019 Brier from Windsor, with over 2.7 million viewers watching the final of the event. This is normally where we would present a STEAM survey would come to you, and while we believe that STEAM reports are valuable when determining predictive economic impact for new or unfamiliar events, I believe we have more direct evidence of the impact of this event. This is the Brier. The recent 2019 Brier in Windsor generated approximately $11 million in economic impact to tourism, or according to Tourism Kingston, and sold over 97,000 tickets. Locally, the 2019 World Men's Championship, held here last April, sold a record of 69,000 tickets over the event. It's the highest amount a men's world championship has ever had. Every room in Lethbridge and surrounding areas was sold out for the 10 days. Millions of dollars were spent directly at local restaurants, bars, retail shopping, gas stations, various other entertainment and tourism-related businesses. The Lethbridge Curling Club itself received $130,000 in 50-50 revenue that we were privileged enough to be able to use towards junior curling, high school curling, outreach programs in the community, things like Rocks and Rings, all of our wheelchair curling, Special Olympics curling. These are things that are supported by that $130,000 and beyond. Curling Canada itself guarantees in the contract 2,250 room nights just for their participants, officials, and staff. That's $250,000 spend back right away that they bid. And I think we all understand the size of that. In conclusion, we know how to do this. We have an engaged volunteer base and an organizing committee expertise. Curling Canada loves coming to Lethbridge and respects our ability to host this event. If we are successful in this bid, our bid committee will transition into a host committee. This is when we will engage the community to make this a complete 360-degree celebration in Lethbridge, turning the 10 days of the Brier into a true Discover Lethbridge event. downtown, malls, entertainment venues, local industry, schools, other associations will all be encouraged to find a way to participate in this event, to really open Lethbridge up to Canada in March. This is also an opportunity to inject needed monetary growth and community celebration after what we're all going through during these challenging times. With that, we humbly request $1 million in cash and in-kind support for our bid and a letter of support from the Lethbridge, City of Lethbridge to host the 2022 Briar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mearns. We have questions from councillors. Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you both for this presentation. Certainly, it sounds like an amazing event, but you have to know we're now in a very different circumstance than we were when we agreed to host the Worlds here, with the pandemic, with the recovery, et cetera. Does it have to be 2022? Can we go 2024, 2026? Could we look at another time when it might be more feasible for sponsorship or funding?
We're here to bid on the 2022 Briar. Bids in further years aren't open yet, so really it's a mute discussion to have. Injecting the type of revenue as we are all searching what we can do to help this community and help this community crawl out of a hole. I would think a Briar it would be welcome way sooner than later.
Thank you.
Councillor Higgin.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. A question that I had when you were going through and you're talking about STEAM and you didn't have any information for STEAM, and you've rattled off some numbers, obviously, of what Windsor thought. Background information to that, do you have that provided? I couldn't find anything in here to substantiate. Not that I don't believe it is true, but as far as the STEAM model is what we kind of go on for most of these projects. And could you explain again why you did not, because I know STEAM was part of this, you could use them. Why did you not?
Again, sorry, yeah, when we sat down to do the presentation and go through it, and when we went through STEAM last time with council, it was met with some doubt as to its legitimacy. We don't doubt the legitimacy of STEAM, right? Especially, like I say, when it comes to a new or an unfamiliar event that the council is trying to make a decision upon. This is the Briar, and I don't mean to make that something that we don't have to prove the numbers to. I can get those. The tourism Kingston number was 11 million to 14 million that they did in economic impact. I think that what we did for Tourism Lethbridge for the World Men's was something like 4.7 million or a little bit more than that in economic impact that's in that report. So we believe the economic impact is there and that the STEAM would not have been as part of it. Maybe we should have.
No, I appreciate that answer. I'm still stuck on, there's background and there's obviously legitimacy to the STEAM model. It's been proven, and I know there may be some pushback, but it gives some points of and the numbers rather than we heard that it's this good. They obviously didn't have COVID out in Windsor, but that's why I asked that question. Right? I guess that's supposed to be a question. I'm sorry.
Right, Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. I think the Briar is like the equivalent of the Super Bowl in Canada, because everyone talks about it's always in March. We kind of know it, and it's 3 times or 4 times bigger than the men's Worlds. I think I'm just guessing that. My question is, what is your deadline when you have to put your bid in?
The bid deadline is June 30th.
Was it in the presentation? Because I was going over the presentation. So do you have to June of this year?
Yes, June 30th is the deadline for the 2022 Briar. It was in the information. It didn't make it into the presentation. Sorry.
At least we have it on the record out there. That's good. So there's a sense of urgency here. How did you get to $1 million? Why was that? How was that number formulated?
In the bid package, the minimum bid is $750,000. Brandon, Kelowna, and Windsor, all three of those, which were last year, this year, and next year's in Kelowna, the bids were all over $1 million. To get it, the successful bids were all over $1 million, 1.1, 1.2. We felt that we needed to get to the $1 million mark to make this to make the bid legitimate and solid. Curling Canada scores the amount at 50% of the whole bid. So there are other things in the bid other than, ability to host it, volunteer base, transportation, all the other things that come in play. But the amount is 50%, and we just felt there needed to be $1 million to make it a legitimate bid.
My last question, if I may. Do they go to a short list and then you have to make a presentation again, or is it just a one-time, this is our best one, and they'll make the decision, or is there a short list?
One-time bid, we will send them in, and they will announce in October, November, depending on where they are in their decision-making tree, whether you get it or not.
Thank you for your presentation.
Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you both for coming and for making the presentation. A couple of questions for you. Actually, just a statement a bit for context around STEAM. It's not that council rejects STEAM. It's the measuring of what is predicted. That's what we're missing, is the feedback from, if you say it's going to generate $11 million, where's the feedback or the information? That's not your issue. That's somebody's theoretical research, somebody brighter than me. When you're looking at $1 million to bid or buy it, cash and in kind, do you have an approximate breakdown?
Yeah, the in-kind portion would be about $320,000 from NMAX, $80,000 from the soccer center. So right now, just the top level in-kind is $400,000. That may creep up a little bit more as we start to actually run the event at NMAX, and there's other salaries come in play and other things that come into play. But right now, it's about $400,000 is in-kind.
Okay, thank you. And there is a possibility of transit, things of that nature.
Correct, yes.
We'll be working with that as well. Thank you. Is the letter a statement in principle? Or is it a statement, yeah, we've got $1 million in the bank sitting here ready? The reason I ask is we have Recovery Lethbridge going. We're talking about the economic impact. We have to look at the broader picture of impact to the community. Assuming the medical professionals are correct, and this could take us, COVID could keep us in the current situation into 2021. As you say, 2022 is a great time to come out and celebrate for sure, but we've got a lot of people we have to take care of between now and then. Is there the ability of providing you with a letter in principle, and then sometime before October, November, when we have been looking at our budget, we're looking at the community, we're looking at what we need to provide for other sources as well, we've got the ability to say, no, we can't at this time?
My answer to that would be, I believe that when we would bid on this, we would be bidding in good faith, that if our bid was accepted, that we would carry through. Now, we don't have to write a check right then. It's not till 2022 when the Briar is actually on and we do all of the final accounting. But I think the good faith argument is yes, if we get it, we're ready to go right now.
Thank you. Final question in this round then to City Manager or Designate. Do we have $1 million we could identify at this time?
Mayor Spearman through to Councillor Kaufman. Currently, the balance of available funding from the major event hosting grant is approximately $355,000. So the alternative would be to fund the remainder from some other, a reserve, the MRSRs coming to mind.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I'll hop out and get back in.
Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. Actually, my questions were mostly answered there, but I just wanted to kind of dwell a little bit on success measurements, because you've got the advantage of having hosted, the World Championships, the Scotties, and mixed World Championships. And I mean, without going into specific numbers, although those are great to have, how can you, as a part of Lethbridge and part of the curling club, measure the success that we had with those tournaments beyond money? Can you quantify that in some way?
I think there's a lot of different ways we can look at the success of it, whether it be, Curling Canada's raving about the event, probably the best worlds they had. Just some small things. We at the curling club saw a 35% increase in new junior curlers and new adult curlers the year after. We had 12 brand new teams in a rookie league. There 12 brand new teams, brand new curlers in a rookie league that came to the curling club. We got calls from across Canada and across the world wanting to bring their teams to train in Lethbridge. Chinese team comes to mind. They want to come back and train here because they had such a good time here. They enjoyed it. So I think sort of anecdotally, when we look at where events like this put Lethbridge on the map and where they position us, I think we've been so successful in that.
I guess, and just when we go out into the public and we say $1 million is going to this event, how do we explain that to the general public who's just saying that's $1 million? And I know you've come up with some. I mean, what's your best answer for that?
It's $1 million investment in this community. It's $1 million investment in where we are going as a community and how we are growing as a city. To be recognized, to be able to hold and host a Briar, to be able to go to our business community and say, here's what we're going to do for you. We are going to host an event where we're going to sell out every single one of your hotel rooms in town. We are going to fill up your restaurants. We're going to fill up your tourism areas. We're going to have people shopping in your malls. We're going to have them here and loving this community and saying, you know what, I think I'm going to send my kids to your university. I think they're going to come and see this college. I think we're going to come back here again. These are all the things that major events like a Briar give for your $1 million.
Thank you.
Councillor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your presentation. I've talked to both of you about this many times. One of the things that you mentioned is that, and this is kind of interesting because we might not have a big enough facility to host the patch, which is it's a huge revenue generator for the curling association. So, without, just at this early term, how do you reconcile that right now? Because that's a big piece of this. If we say let's go ahead with it, are we going to have to deal with another kind of facility?
Thanks, Councillor Miyashiro. The patch compared to what we would have set it up for before for the other events is a little small. And the only reason is we just used half the soccer center. In talking with the soccer center management, if Curling Canada needs it to go another half again, another whatever, there's lots of room in the soccer center to expand the patch. They've just always had it just in half as to what they've needed. But it could expand to certainly accommodate what Curling Canada and what would be expected.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Hopefully everyone can hear me. My phone is working better now. Gentlemen, thank you for the presentation. Most of my questions were answered, and I'm one of the ones that has always wanted STEAM verified after the fact, so I appreciate you bringing forward some of the actuals from other communities. Appreciate that. Question through you, Mayor Spearman, to City Manager or City Treasurer. The major events budget, I thought I heard there's only $300,000 left in that. Is that out to the end of 2022, or is that as of today?
Councillor Carlson, that is $355,000 approximately, and it is for the budget period of 2019 to 2022.
Okay, so for the next 3 years, we only have 355 left in total.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Hey, thank you. I think another source was identified as the MRSR. I just want to understand from the city manager or designate, there's $400,000 in in-kind contributions, $600,000 in cash. there must be a cash implication for the 400,000. Somebody's foregoing revenues, or what happens with that? How does that 400,000 make up, and what is the cash implication, and to who?
Mayor Spearman, the in-kind contribution still has an impact on the departments that are contributing, whatever that is, rent or different things. And so the $1 million ask gets allocated to those departments as to offset those costs that they're impacted by for the in-kind portion. So if it's $300,000 to the NMAX, that $1 million would be drawn from the funding source, say the reserve, and allocated to the department because they've incurred costs or lost revenues due to the event going on. So from our perspective, it's treated as the same, whether it's cash to the event organizer or cost incurred in kind to the departments.
Thank you. My second question is to our presenters today. When we did host the Men's Worlds, the city incurred some unanticipated costs. So we had to make arrangements for alternate venues, for example, for WHL hockey games and things like that. I was pleased to hear that both the NMAX and the Hurricanes are on board with this bid. And how might the Briar impact the Hurricanes, and I think primarily the Hurricanes, and anybody else proposing to use the NMAX at that time of year?
Yeah, we the very first door we knocked on was Pete Anholtz and the Hurricanes, and of course with Kim and Becky at the NMAX. This is a fairly regular thing that happens with the Briar going into WHL rinks. They know a year and a half in advance. They just schedule a road trip for that time. It's during regular season. There's no playoff or financial implications to that whatsoever. They'll just be on the road for those 10 days, and it's far enough in advance that certainly NMAX doesn't have to move other people out. They would just block it off and away they go.
Thank you. Councillor Higgin.
I must not have jotted down my question because, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it was answered. The 400,000, the in-kind, if that was actually considered as cash throughout. You already answered that. Thank you very much, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Haley.
Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. You've got a list of contributors here or letters of support. Curling Alberta, Lethbridge Hurricanes, NMAX Centre, which is a city department, Service Sports Centre, Lethbridge Lodging, Tourism, Lethbridge Sport Council. Have any of these organizations contributed money or are committing funds?
No, they have not.
Okay, thank you. This is kind of a philosophical question. So in your conversation with Curling Canada, and maybe Ms. Harassim is standing out there, and we can chat about this later post-COVID, but do these national organizations understand that municipal governments don't generally have $1 million lying around? I guess what I'm wondering is can a conversation begin with people on the board of these organizations to maybe look at different structure? As you've identified and as we've proven, we're a kick-ass community for doing curling. That, in my humble opinion, should just be enough. However, I recognize that there is a requirement to support and do these other things, but the constant coming to municipalities or municipal governments across the country does create undue stress and pressure on us. We want to support. It's great to showcase what we've got. The reality is, again, we've got 100,000 people here that we have to care for as well. So do you know if those conversations are going on? Maybe let me just put it that way.
I don't. I'm not on the board of Curling Canada or have any conversations with them at all on their structure.
Maybe we'll start sending letters to these organizations. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Okay. I have another question. It says the Lethbridge bid is supported by Curling Alberta. That's not the government of Alberta. That's Curling Alberta as an organization, right?
Correct.
And so that's moral support or letter of support, but no financial support, right?
Yeah, no financial support at this time from Curling Alberta. They're actually they're part of us. They will receive money from the Briar, once it's come in, they will get a portion of the revenues.
They will get a portion of the revenues, but
The host committee, whether it be Curling BC, Curling Manitoba, we get a part. They would then distribute that to all curling clubs. We'll get a portion of that also.
we invest $1 million, and they get the money. So, did I hear that correctly? They get.
Curling Canada runs the event, and they keep all the money, other than the money they spend on renting, buying hotel rooms, doing all the things, bringing people in, a normal thing. At the end of it, at ticket sales, they give money to Curling Alberta from ticket sales, saying, here you go, thank you for hosting the Briar. Curling Alberta then takes that money and gives it to different curling clubs. We will get a portion of that. Plus, we get to keep all the 50-50 money.
Okay. I did have another question. It was a much nicer question, and
Nothing wrong with that other one.
Relating to somewhat to Deputy Mayor Kaufman's question. Every year it's a competitive process, and the competition's fairly stiff to host the Briar. Is that correct?
Very stiff, yes.
Do you know how many bids there were for the 2021 Briar in Kelowna?
They don't release that information.
Okay. All right. Okay, Councillor Higgin. Okay. Right. I see no further questions in the queue from council. I would like to thank you for your presentation. I'd like you to take seats in the audience while we deal with the resolution. Okay. I have a resolution from Councillor Campbell, 2022 Briar bid. Be it resolved that City Council receive this report and presentation as information, and further be it resolved that City Council direct the City Manager or designate to work with the 2022 Briar Committee and to return to the June 15th, 2020 meeting of City Council. Councillor Campbell.
Well, as we've just heard, this is one of the greatest sporting championships in Canada. It is also arguably the only event of this size and prestige that can still be hosted in cities the size of Canada. As we've heard and we know, we can do this. We do this very well. To quote my colleague, we're kick-ass when it comes to supporting curling. So, and it's nice to see that they also have the support of many stakeholders, including the Lethbridge Hurricanes, and they're looking for letter support, and of course, the $1 million in a combination of cash and in kind for the Briar 2022.
Okay. Are there any questions? I know I have a question. And that is, the resolution doesn't speak to bringing back a resolution. Is that the assumption that there would be a recommendation coming back from administration on the 15th, or this is simply to work with the 2020 Briar Bid Committee and to return to the June 15th, 2020 meeting? Is that just with information, or is that with a recommendation? That's my question. No one has an answer? Okay. I guess my one more question to the bid committee. This is to return to council on June the 15th. Mr. Mearns, if a decision is made on June the 15th, is that satisfactory for your bid requirements? Okay, thank you. Councillor Miyashiro.
No, that's fine, Mayor. I'll withdraw.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Just in terms of clarity then on the resolution to return to the June 15th, 2020 meeting, with what? And I think that's what you were trying to ask, is to the city manager or designate, you're just coming back with some further detail sort of flushed out of that?
Yeah, again, I'm not sure what that direction to administration is, but if it is to come back having done a further financial analysis of the bid to provide more information to council, we can certainly work with the bid committee to do that if that is what the intent of that resolution is.
To the mover, can I ask if that's what the intent was?
I honestly, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Okay.
I apologize.
I'll try to provide some clarification and say, to return to the June 15th meeting of City Council with a recommendation as to funding sources. So if that can be done, then we can vote on it as a council.
Again, just sensitive to the fact that the bid is due June 30th. So if council is prepared on the 15th to provide some sort of direction, there could be a resolution that the companies.
It's
Thank
yes or no on June the 15th is my understanding.
Okay.
And so I think, I'm not sure, I would ask the city clerk, do we need to amend this resolution to provide clarity?
It does need to be amended, but it could be a friendly amendment if the mover is
Sure,
amenable.
I'm just understanding, we're just saying, yes, please go look and come back with more information. Is that the way I understand?
Right. What I would suggest is that to return to the June 15th, 2020 meeting of City Council with recommended funding sources for the 1 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
It's acceptable to the mover. Is that good enough? Can we add the $1 million request into the resolution so we know?
That'd be $1 million combination in cash and in kind?
Yep.
Okay, that should be in that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, to the mover, that clarifies the resolution from your perspective.
And just to be clear, it's the 2022 bid? Okay.
Okay, there's the resolution. We'll move on with questions. Councillor Kaufman? Okay, Councillor Higgin?
Mine is debate as well.
Councillor Croson? Okay. All right. Are there any further questions from Councillor? Okay. We will move on to debate. I'll ask the mover to open.
Well, now things have, in my mind, things have changed now. We're specifically asking for administration to go forward and see where we can come up with the appropriate funding for this. Whereas I thought we would be just voting today on yes or no on the funding. So I'll leave it up for more debate on this.
Okay. Councillor Croson?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Again, thank you guys for this presentation. Thank you for your passion for the sport. I so wish I could say yes, but I am going to respectfully have to say no to this. There are just too many unknowns ahead for me. We're not sure how the recovery will happen. We're not sure how long the recovery will take. People are deferring taxes, utilities, mortgages, et cetera. What's going to happen when all those deferrals come true? There's just so many things that we're having to think about and work on. Our purpose right now has to be on maintenance. We have to make sure that people have basics. Do they have food? Do they have shelter? Do they have childcare, et cetera, et cetera? And I can't, at this point, see giving $1 million to sports. And as my colleague, Councillor Kaufman, said earlier, I too have a note here that sports organizations have to do this differently. Communities cannot sustain this process for them. They need a new model, and perhaps this pandemic is the time for them to come up with a new model, because while we do want to host sports, inspire the youth, do all of this. I know when the Worlds were announced, my mom bought tickets the first day and was there for every curling game. It is amazing to have, but I cannot support this at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Kaufman, or sorry, Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I want to thank you, gentlemen, as well, for coming and understand that my question about the theoretical or philosophical conversation is not aimed at you. I don't shoot the messenger, but I think a series of letters should be coming from not just this council, but councils across the country too, as my colleague just identified. Try to have a conversation about a different way to do this. I think the merits of what communities like Lethbridge do should be 75% of the discussion, the conversation, and how a community can come together. As identified, you've got 6 letters of support here from other organizations that could actually be contributing funds to this as well. So we need to have, I think, a broader conversation. I like the resolution much better now than it was originally presented. I think coming back with a little bit more information on what is possible or what the options are in 2 weeks can provide a better idea of clarity for me and make a decision at that time with more information. So I will support this resolution and wish you both best. Thank you.
Councillor Hagan.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Again, thank you very much for the presentation. Coming in here, as Councillor Campbell had mentioned, I thought we were going to go through and have this vote. And I understand that Council's able to change or make amendments to the resolutions, which is understandable. We're pushing this down a couple weeks. It's still stating that there's $1 million in cash or in kind. That we've heard that the in kind is still considered cash, so we've got $1 million. Years ago, or even to last year, I'm really excited that that we'd have the opportunity to bid on a Briar, something as big as this. It's extremely would be a great thing to be able to host within our community. The tough part, as my colleague Thread has just mentioned, is during these uncertain times now, it's a struggle. We don't know where we're going to be in 6 months, a year and a half. We've heard from our finance department that we don't have. We're at $355K that is left in this major event hosting. We are here to make some very tough decisions, especially in light of what's been happening these last few months. I would love to see this in the future. I think it's, again, a fantastic event when we're in a stronger financial position, but I don't know if I can expect to move forward with this and support this on the back of the taxpayers. So at this time, I cannot support it.
Hey, Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much, Mayor Spearman. First of all, this is something in the future. This is 2022. We're not hosting the Briar in 2020 or 2021. I think, it's easy to say, we got to cut back, and I understand, but I don't look at it as a cutback measure, rather an investment. The economic spin-off in our community is huge. This is really the Super Bowl of sports in Canada. Some people go, it's hard to believe if they're from another country, but it is. Curling is huge in our country. And it's not something that just happens on one day. It's a one-week event. And if you ever watch TSN, all you hear is the community that's played in over and over. How many times have I heard Brandon or Red Deer in the past or whatever? So if you look at the spin-off, and we don't know the exact number, but I know we're going to get tenfold on our investment on something like this. And secondly, there's been a lot of sad things happening in this world and within Alberta, within our city. And it'd be nice to have something to celebrate and get excited about. There's no cost right now in putting this bid unless we're successful. So there's numerous volunteers, numerous organizations that are going to come together, use their own time, not charge it back to the city, to try to make this a successful event. Right now, we have successful in 3 major events so far. I would like to get the 4th one, and this being the best of the best, so I will be supporting this 100%.
Thank you. Councillor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. And Councillor Parker's right. This is in a couple of years. It's something for us to look forward to coming out of the pandemic and in our recovery. The other thing is that it's not just the steam benefit to what you're talking about, the direct steam benefit to businesses here. The promotional value of an event like the Briar is unbelievable. They do 3 draws a day on TV, and just about every commercial break, they cut away to a scene from Lethbridge. There are so many people that have such a great perception of Lethbridge just from the men's worlds. That they see what a great city we have and all the things we have to offer. And that is something that we can't even afford to promote at the level we're going to get. This event would be a huge success in Lethbridge, and I think we owe it to the gentleman there today and to our senior management team to come up with some numbers and for us to vote on when we have the solid numbers, not right now to just shut it down completely. This will be huge if we can pass it, and I will fully support this resolution.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Sperman. Hopefully you can hear me. I was on mute for a bit there. I do want to add my support to this for our administration to go away and figure out how we can find the dollars for this. This is, I think one of my colleagues said it, it's in the future. I sort of look at this as some sort of stimulus funding for our economy and our community. We know that we're struggling right now. We do need events, we need activities, we need economic generators to bring back our local economy. This is major. This is traditionally, or exactly what the major event hosting grant was created for. Sadly, we've been victims of our own success, and the fund is oversubscribed or nearly fully subscribed. But in my mind, that's a good thing. It showcases Lethbridge as a community of events, of tourism, and as we're pushing to diversify our economy, one of the goals was to strengthen our tourism sector. Events like this are the major driver and contributor to doing that. So I fully support this. I hope our administration can go away and find some funding sources. I know we were recently members of Canadian Badlands. We've since pulled back to focus more on tourism in Lethbridge. So there's some funding that we had out there that we're no longer expending. I'm hoping there are other pockets of money like that we can find, and the administration can come back and give us an appropriate source to allocate from. I will be supporting this. This is exactly how we need to move forward to bring our economy back online and strengthen the economy for the future. So with that, I fully support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I too will be in support of bringing this information back in 2 weeks. I don't think there's any need to make a decision today. I think we can come back in 2 weeks. I think we can look at it in good faith, even if the recommendation is to come back with a split between the major event hosting grant and the MRSR. 2 years from now, in 2022, the Olympics will have taken place between February the 4th and February the 20th. This event will happen 3 weeks later and will be building on the momentum where people have been focused on curling in the Olympics, and then we'll see curling firsthand in Canada, in Lethbridge. This has the potential to be the most successful Briar in quite a long time, and I think that could help people choose to come to Lethbridge and support the Briar. I think the potential to spend $1 million and get it at a return of 10 or 15 times $1 million to our community is worth the investment. So I believe we should respect the presentation, respect the opportunity, and allow the event to come back in 2 weeks for full consideration by council. So I will be supporting the resolution. With that, I'll ask the mover to close.
Thank you, Your Worship. A line from my favorite musical, Hamilton, where George Washington says to him, "Figure it out, Alexander. That's an order from your commander." So this is what we're voting on here today is not whether or not we're going to give the $1 million today. We're going to go and ask council or administration if we can figure this out. And as all of my colleagues in support of this have said, this is indeed the Super Bowl of curling, this is the big one. I thought when we got the World Men's Championship, that was the big one, but as our esteemed former city manager said, Jody Melly said, no, the Briar. The Briar is the big one. So we have an opportunity here. But the $1 million ask does scare me, but maybe there's a way to do it. So with that, I will ask for the vote.
Okay, we'll take that as your close. All in favor? 8, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, online. In favor or opposed?
Carlson, in favor.
Maybe you should just do a roll call.
Well, you're the last one to vote, so why not just vote?
Oh, I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you. Opposed? Okay, that motion passes 6-3. Thank you. Thanks to our presenters. We'll be now moving on in the agenda. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to submissions. Councillor Miyashiro, Recreation and Culture 2020 Community Capital Project Grant Recommendations. Ms. Lori Harrison is going to be available to answer questions as well. I have a resolution from Councillor Miyashiro. Be it resolved that City Council approve the funding for the 8 community capital projects totaling $377,958.81 out of the Community Capital Project Grant annual budget as follows. Lethbridge and Region Community Housing Corporation, $66,000. Lethbridge Community Bingo Association, $23,404.35. Southern Alberta Ethnic Association, $22,845.40. The Norbridge Senior Citizens Association, $22,684.70. The Elim Society for Senior Citizens Care, $65,893.33. The Lethbridge Disc Golf Association, $7,131.03. Lethbridge Minor Softball Club, $70,000. Lethbridge Minor Hockey, $100,000. And further be it resolved that as required, all funded groups receive a letter of support from the Mayor's Office for additional funding applications. Councillor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. The CCPG program allows our local not-for-profits to do capital projects with funding support up to 1/3 to a maximum of $200,000, or planning projects up to a half with a maximum of $15,000 of the project cost. This is then leveraged to gain full funding from other sources, such as grants from other levels of government and/or foundations and donations. This is a matching grant. This is not meant to be the main source of income for any of these organizations. But what it does is it allows organizations to get to a certain point with other funding or granting organizations, and then the city can help them get over the hump to get the projects underway. This was created to align with the province's CFEP program, or Community Facility Enhancement Program. And part of what we're looking at is CCPG, or the CFEP program has undergone some changes, and there might be less funding available in the upcoming year. It doesn't affect this program as much because they just can't get the money if they don't get the CFEP funding. So they all work hand in hand. Our role is to make sure first that they have the other funding in place, then our funding gets released.
Thank you. I see some councillors in the queue. Are these for questions or debate? Okay, questions? Okay, Councillor Croson.
Thank you. I assume Ms. Harrison will be the one best able to answer this. Can you confirm that the majority of these are for maintenance, renovation, and retrofits to existing organization or to existing buildings?
Yes, yeah, they would mostly be that.
And mostly for updating the buildings that already exist? and
Yes.
maintaining. And this program exists because of the provincial grant. And as Councillor Miyashiro alluded to, I just want to be clear on, if they get the provincial money, twice as much money to be coming into the community because of that. If they don't get the provincial money, we pay nothing.
Exactly. We don't release any of this money until they've raised all of the matching dollars required, and then at that time, we release the first payment to them. So if they don't raise the money, the project is just canceled, and we encourage them to reapply at a later date when there might be more other matching grants.
Thank you.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I think Councillor Miyashiro and perhaps Ms. Harrison answered my question. It was regarding CFEP. I had heard some news that the province was looking at not implementing that this year because of COVID, but it doesn't matter about our funding. So I think my question is moot. Thank you.
Okay, my understanding is that if we approve this $377,958.81, that will mean that projects will go forward with a total combined value of about $1.2 million. So in essence, our injection of about of less than $400,000 is going to be repaid 3 times in total.
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
Thank you. Councillor Kaufman, Deputy Mayor Kaufman, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman, to the city manager, or Ms. Harassim. How much of this is, which one of these associations, organizations are in city facilities?
So we would have the Ethnic Association. The disc golf will be a course on city park land, and minor softball will be in addition to Softball Valley, and Lethbridge Minor Hockey is improvements to Logan Boulay Arena. So those 4 would be.
So we're able to get additional provincial funding through these organizations to benefit our facilities.
Yes, these groups are able to leverage a lot of funding that the city of Lethbridge is not able to apply for. So it does allow us to improve our facilities as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
And when might we expect, if City Council approves these, when might we expect these projects to go forward? Because we're very interested in projects that will create employment in the community, and most of these will either be buying equipment or else installing or maintaining. So when might they actually go forward?
I would actually expect this year was a little bit of an anomaly in that 6 of the 8 projects already have the 2/3 of funds raised, and so only 2 need to still seek funds. And part of our rule with this grant is the project cannot start until the project is approved here today by City Council. So 6 of the groups are actually waiting for the vote today and are eager to get started.
6 of the 8 could go.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Any further questions from council? I see none. If you'd like to take a seat in the audience, we'll deal with the resolution. Councillor Miyashiro, would you like to open?
No, I'll close.
Okay. On to debate. Okay, I will debate, I'll say this, I will be supporting this. This grant program continues to be very successful in supporting local nonprofit groups to complete their capital projects that create opportunities and increase accessibility for members and the community. I think we understand that there are financial stresses caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, and we think it's important to move forward and balance fiscal responsibility with helping to move the economy and local organizations forward. So I will be supporting this resolution. Councillor Croson?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I will be supporting this as well because this is about maintenance. It is supporting community groups. It's supporting buildings that exist. It is helping them use this as matching money to get money from other orders of government. I'm also happy to hear, I know it's in our reports and the public should know that this grant will also be reviewed later in 2020 as well, so we'll make sure it's working to the best it can, spending citizens' money. And I love the fact that there's no money spent unless the province matches it, so I will support this.
Any further debate? Councillor Higgin.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. many of the comments have already been made, and I will support this. I like the idea of it's not a handout, but a hand up. You've already indicated that 2/3 is going to be coming forward, so we have these different organizations contributing to our community in that 2/3 way, and so to give up that 1/3, again, not the handout, but the hands up, and I look forward to supporting these organizations, so I will vote in favor.
Thank you. Any further debate? I'll ask Councillor Miyashiro to close.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Since 2004, the CCPG program has funded 192 projects at a cost of $8.8 million. The total cost of these projects was over $37 million. And this is probably the best leveraging of dollars that we as a city do to help our community organizations. And in that, I just ask that my colleagues on council support this resolution.
Question has been called. All in favor? Councillor Carlson?
In favor.
Councillor Miyashiro?
Favor.
That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, it's now 3:04. We can move on to official business before we take breaks, if you like, with council's permission. Okay, we're going to move on to 6.1.
Actually, Mayor Spearman, so we could work through official business together, can we take a 5-minute bio break?
Okay, I was asking for direction from council. If you want to take a 5-minute break now, we can do. And
thank you.
That would normally involve a media scrum for anything that's happened so far. There are 2 newsworthy events coming up, so we may have to take another break. But if a bio break's required, we will take a 5-minute bio break. Thank you. Please turn off your microphones. Okay, I'm going to call the City Council meeting back to order. We're now at 6.1, rescindment of Path 24, 6 Mile Park, from Capital Improvement Program, Direct D11 Pathway System Connections and Extensions. At the beginning of the meeting, we passed a motion to consider this. It passed with a 2/3 vote. If the motion is to pass, it also requires a 2/3 vote. From Councillor Higgin. Whereas Capital Improvement Program Project D11, Pathway System and Connections and Extensions was approved by City Council on May the 23rd, 2017. And whereas on May the 25th, 2020, Community Issues Committee received a presentation with regards to Pathway 24, 6 Mile Park, as identified in Capital Improvement Program Project D11, Pathway System Connections and Extensions. And whereas Council is responsible for the prioritization of projects that support the strategic priorities of our community, and whereas not proceeding with the construction of Pathway 24 6 Mile Park as part of Project D11 will be a savings of $1,750,000 for the City of Lethbridge. Therefore, be it resolved that City Council rescind the approval of Pathway 24 6 Mile Park within Project D11 in the 2018 to 2027 Capital Improvement Program budget, as was approved in the May 23rd, 2017 meeting of Council. And further be it resolved that the construction of Pathway 24 6 Mile Park be cancelled, and that the 2018 to 2027 Capital Improvement Program budget be amended to reflect this cancellation. Councillor Higgin.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Sorry. Oh,
Okay, I didn't know when Deputy Mayor Kaufman will also bring forward his amendment, if that's going to now or later.
You know what? My opening was just merely going to be discussion on this. A couple months back, on March the 9th, we looked at this project after the COVID concerns that were coming throughout our community and what was happening, and looking at some of the ways of cost savings. Now, that was just merely, I think at that time, trying to wonder what we were going to do with funds as far as 4 particular projects that we had on the books, and if we were going to continue with them as per the KPMG report. So with that, I'm just going to open it up to questions, and I'll wait to debate. And I think Councillor Kaufman, you may.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Kaufman, did you want to introduce your resolution at this time?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I don't know if there are a large number of questions on the original motion, but I do have an amendment I would like introduced at some point here in the debate or deliberation.
Okay. Are there further questions with respect to the resolution? Okay, Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much. Okay, so my question is, okay, if this was to pass and we're to rescind it, all the work that's taken place in regards to stakeholder engagement, all the planning, all the surveying, all that, would that be for none if this was to pass?
Who are you directing that?
Direct that to the city manager. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, I'd ask the Director of Community Infrastructure to address that.
At the end of the day, it's council's right to make make a decision, reversing a decision that was in fact founded on a significant amount of planning and public engagement up until that point that informed the existing capital improvement plan. So this decision, without question, actually flies in the face to some degree the engagement that was conducted as part of that planning exercises, and the fact that those planning documents, those master plans, were in fact received in their entirety by City Council and prior to the approval of the CIP.
Yes, thank you. My second question, if this was to pass or be rescinded, would there be no longer be access for all citizens in our community to that area of the city of Lethbridge in regards to pedestrian walkways and all that. It'd be kind of limited to, can you help me get my head around that?
Yeah, again, as Mr. Ellis reminded council last Monday, is the creation of, the completion of this particular Pathway 24 project provides a level of access to the members of the public, members of our community that currently doesn't exist today. It is very undeveloped, informal, quite challenging terrain today. And again, based on prior work, this area, if you want to increase access to it in a formal way, to more than just trail runners and mountain bikers and the cycling community, this is a way that you could achieve that.
Councillor Croson, did you have a question?
Yes. Helps if I turn my microphone on. Thank you, Mayor Spearman. To the city manager or designate to the city treasurer, I know it's one of the whereases, it's not one of the part of the resolution, but the $1.750 million, is that from gas tax?
Councillor Croson, the majority of is gas tax, yes.
So it's not really a savings. We could reallocate it, but it's not technically a saving for the city because this is money from the federal government.
It could be reallocated to a project, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess my question, perhaps through the city manager to the director of infrastructure services, as Councillor Campbell mentioned, we've been getting a lot of feedback. I would say 95% of it in opposition to this project. What happened with the consultation process? Did the communication process go wrong, or is there something? How are we getting such a different message today than what was received from city officials when they did their consultation?
This is not a different message. This same vocal opposition existed last March at the most recent consultation with the community back in 2017 as we engaged the community in the River Valley Parks Master Plan, and prior to that when we did the Cycling and Pathways Master Plan back in 2007. So this group of folks are opposed to any formal development at this particular location, has always expressed that opposition all along. So this is just, again, a reiteration of their position at a point in time where we're coming closer to actually making an investment or potentially not.
Okay. So council approved this project again as part of a package to try and stimulate the economy. It was always on the books, but this was near the top of the list of things that could go forward quickly and create employment and create an investment in the community. How quickly would this project go forward if it was approved?
We are tender ready. We could issue the tender tomorrow. In fact, the documents sit with our purchasing department as we speak, but are on hold pending this debate and decision today. There's typically a 3-week turnaround in terms of tender, and then another couple weeks beyond that to actually select the highest evaluated, lowest bid contractor. So this construction could happen as early as probably late July, early August.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Higgin?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Question for the city manager as designate. We've spoken a lot about the engagement that's been done over the past few years regarding this project. And the question I have is, the engagement was not directed to this exact project, but multiple when we did this engagement session, from what I understand. Can you confirm or deny that?
There were, last March, this project was highlighted quite specifically, but as part of a community conversation as well. So there were other projects being presented by the Parks Department at the same time, But this was quite explicitly presented in the foyer last year and was part of an online engagement process at that particular time. And again, that's why I remind council that we heard these voices of opposition quite vocally back then. In fact, we had some members of council will recall that they were getting emails at that time, and there was an effort by our staff to actually respond to the opposition back then. So this is not a new message. This is very much a well-understood argument from this particular group of folks.
So, and just to follow up to that, at that time, as Mayor Spearman indicated, it seems that his 5% or 10% is much higher than mine. I've yet to receive one single one in favor. So that's what I'm just curious to know. After that engagement session, did you have a long list of those that were in support of this?
I don't recall.
Don't recall? Okay.
I don't recall that at that time. I think the more rigorous consultation around 6 Mile Coulee in particular happened during the River Valley Parks Master Plan, and that was the point at which we got the other side of the other voice, the other opinions associated with 6 Mile Coulee and the development of it, and that was in terms of environmental stakeholders, general park users, those other stakeholders that Mr. Ellis mentioned last week.
And it was more than just this particular Pathway 24 at that time?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Hawkins, I would like to give you another opportunity to respond, because you started off by saying, if I think I understood you correctly, the council can make a decision and we can change things that we've already approved, and I understand that. But then you said that this flies, your exact words were, this flies in the face of the process or procedure or the, to get to this point. So I'm thinking two things. Number one, you're telling us that we can do what we want, but now with that comment, I'm sensing that, maybe we should proceed with this because of whatever reason. What I'd like to know is, if this flies in the face of the process that was created or has taken place, and now I'm hearing you say that this is a group that has been vocal, most of the emails and stuff that I've been receiving is clearly saying, and this is the opportunity I'd like you to have, is that this group was not heard. And that's why we are getting all these letters and emails as we've been receiving. So I'm sensing that if this flies in the face of the process, maybe the process isn't correct where it's allowing all voices to be heard. So I'm sitting here and I'm trying to think, okay, well, you're saying this, all these letters and emails that we're receiving are saying that maybe the process wasn't what you and Mr. Ellis have told us. So can you please maybe elaborate and tell me, because that word flies in the face kind of was not something that I expected.
So the challenge we've always had when we look at the River Valley, and not just 6 Mile Coulee, but the River Valley in general within the city limits, is there are all kinds of competing interests. And that has been the case since way back in the days of the early 80s when we were looking at the urban parks development and trying to actually turn it into more than just a natural area or an undeveloped area, to actually make improvements in a more systematic, formal way, an urban way, recognizing full well that one of the strong interests opposed to that is the environmental interest, the naturalist interests, the bird watchers, those kinds of folks that like the untouched, unspoiled nature of the River Valley. So those are the two extremes. To what extent do we invest and urbanize the parkland, the River Valley, versus leave it in its more natural, untouched space? And in the middle of that is the runners, the trail runners, and the cycling folks that like that are not, they're not naturalists, they're not environmentalists, but they're adventurous and they enjoy the outdoors, and so they have a have an interest sort of in the middle somewhere where let us just have access and without any formal intervention or requirements from the city necessarily, and we'll build our own trails and we'll do our own thing. So those are the goalposts in which we're dealing with. And so the effort that we went through most recently, which is the River Valley Parks Master Plan, was to try to reconcile those goalposts, those extremes, that continuum of interest associated with that. Because it's not all or nothing. It is not all just a case of we're going to urbanize and then we're going to only restrict access to very urban formal areas, or we're not going to do anything. We'll just leave it in its natural state and restrict access in a very formal way, or to some extent we find some middle ground and we do some development that respects the environment, respects those stakeholders, as well as accounts for the interests of these folks that you're hearing from most recently. So there is no one answer here. So we landed on a balancing act, which included some development in 6 Mile Coulee in the form of Pathway 24. And that is all we're talking about here today. We're not talking about duplicating an Indian Battle Park and going to that extent in terms of an urban parks development. We're looking at a trail development that recognizes the hazards there, that provides a little greater access to that area than what's afforded today. But that is, when I say flies in the face, that's direct. That isn't what these cyclists want. It isn't what these trail runners want, because it does require us to physically change the environment. It requires us to widen out an informal pathway and actually put in limestone, to build some stairways, to build a couple bridges in order to cross the creeks that exist there, and to eliminate some of the hazards, the natural hazards that exist today. So that's what I meant by it flies in the face, because you've been presented previously with documents that try to balance those competing interests and those different interests, and recognizes that it's always difficult to be all things to all people. But at the end of the day, 6 Mile Coulee, even with this improvement, if it goes ahead, does not suddenly completely eliminate the interests of these folks that you're hearing from in the last couple of weeks. There are still almost 32 kilometers of informal trail that's available to them to access for running and mountain biking as well, over and above this change in one pathway area of 3.5 kilometers.
Okay, my other question, thanks for that. So this project, correct me if I'm wrong, has been approved twice. Has been approved at our CIP process.
Right.
And then because of the operational review, the way I understand it, this was one of the 4 that we were contemplating whether we should do it or not. And then this came as a sole project, and council again supported to continue with this project. So my question is, because I don't recall, at both of those times, when it was discussed as part of the CIP process, and I know you have many open houses and you've got all kinds of stuff everywhere, so the public and the community is totally engaged. And also the second time that it came recently under the city manager when Bram was here, I don't recall getting this opposition or being made known of this opposition then as we are today. So, were these people opposing this back then? Were they this vocal? Did we receive all kinds of stuff? Because I don't have any recollection of that. And so that's why I'm wondering if the process included them and heard their voice, and if that came actually here, so council was aware, well, you got this and you got this opposition, because I don't recall that.
Yeah, there has been very vocal, written opposition to this in the past. I would suggest that this is more organized in greater numbers right at this particular moment in time than in the previous engagements that we had. And I appreciate your perspective that they're not heard, because you're right. That when they say they're not heard, it's because we're not agreeing that this project should be canceled. We're saying that no, all of these other interests are just as important. In fact, have been factored in, and on balance, this investment still makes sense. And so that it isn't a case that they never got heard. They have been heard, and we documented their opposition in the past on those several occasions that we connected with these groups and these individuals in the past. And however, just because we have decided to go in a different direction doesn't mean we discounted them. They were heard. However, their other considerations ultimately led us to decide that no, this is still the right investment in this particular area, given the other things that still exist and that's still available to these folks as we move forward.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much. This is a really, really tough one for me because I'm confused. I'm not confused, but I need some clarification here. So if this resolution if it's rescinded, does that mean that if the vote goes 6-3 in favor, then we re-vote on it again? Am I correct in that?
Worship, if I may, you would not have to re-vote on it again because it would just be reversing the decision. It would go back to what it originally was.
So, okay, I just want to make sure. And second question then, to city manager, or to his designate, if this was rescinded, access, once again, would be limited to this area to a select group of people. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
So, please help me, and city manager, I don't want to, is there a middle ground here at all? Like I don't like to use the word send this back to the drawing board because I looked at the amendment that's going to be coming forward. It still doesn't say anything about having access for the community to come back with for access for all in the community. And I thought that was the whole idea of our trail system. I'm not getting into debate, so I'm trying to find a middle ground here. And I'm really, I don't know how, I don't know, I'm very confused. This is a tough one for me. It's a very difficult one for me. Because I know and Councillor Morrow said it very well there, like, where were all this opposition before? And sometimes those are the people that come out at the last minute, and it's usually the people that get what they want that don't make the opposition. They think things are going in a good way. So we're not hearing from those folks. So how much weight do I put into these letters and to these phone calls and all that? And so am I doing that to a disservice to the people that are really excited about this project? So I'm really confused. I don't like to say that very often because it doesn't look good, but I'm being honest. I'm really confused on this. I'm confused because I'm trying to make this a win-win or some kind of compromise. So I'm very confused. I'm just throwing that out as my comments. I don't know if it's a question, but I'm just throwing that out to your city manager so I understand where I'm coming from right now.
Director of Infrastructure Services, I don't know if you want to comment on the middle ground notion.
Actually, I think Mr. Ellis spoke to it briefly. There was a question last week, and to the extent that, we are making an improvement, we're creating a limestone path. This is a sort of a minimalist path in terms of width and the material. Like it's not a 3 meter wide path, asphalt paved with really robust stairs and structures. It's a middle ground already in terms of recognizing the challenge of the terrain and recognizing these other users and the other interests that want to enjoy 6 Mile Coulee. So from that perspective, we've landed on a design that all factors in that input and those other concerns that we're hearing, but recognizing that it's more than just the dirt track that exists today.
My last question, if I may. So what you're saying there's this will allow not only the whole community, but the bikers and the trail runners will still be able to access this pathway or whatever pathways they want, really.
And that is true. It is true though that we've heard this repeatedly that the mountain bikers don't really like limestone or shale like gravel paths. But they don't want to see us put in asphalt either to make it a more smooth path. They prefer the single lane dirt track that exists today, and the challenge that comes along with that in terms of the experience that they're after. So, however, having said that, there is nothing preventing cyclists and runners from using this path if it in fact gets developed in this fashion, as opposed to just the recreational pedestrian or user as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, when I've been looking at the letters, even the letters that are in favor of the project, I've received a few, were not supportive of the limestone shale paths. So indicating that those were high cost and high maintenance. Is that a city standard?
It is a shale used to be the standard, and then the limestone tends to be a better product in the long run and more easily retrofitted in the event that you get some washouts or you get ruts and those kinds of things going forward. So that is our standard today.
Okay, any comment on why the environmentalists and the complainants, if you like, both seem to oppose the limestone approach?
The initial experience with limestone is it's loose, and it's not, but over time it does get compacted, and then it's easier for the pedestrians and the cyclists to use, but it does take some time to consolidate. But that is true of any gravel path, regardless of whether we locate it. So that initial experience is always a little tricky until it consolidates and compacts over time.
Thank you. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I appreciate the questions and comments from my colleagues. I know that Councillor Kaufman was kind enough to share some thoughts on a possible amendment he was going to make. It hasn't been made at this time, but so I'll ask the current mover. A lot of the correspondence I've received and the comments talked about there's a way we can work together and we can figure this out and make it a win-win from the folks that are concerned about this shale path or this limestone pathway going in and the stairs. In fact, you shared some comments from a Zoom meeting that talked about we can work together. I'm wondering if the terminology that's expressed in the OBR at present about rescinding and canceling, much like Councillor Parker, and pardon the pun, I'm looking for a middle path. Is there a way not canceling or rescinding, but to say, let's all sit down at the table, and these folks, many of them have written to me and said, we've got ideas, we've got thoughts. Is there, short of canceling, is there any thought from the mover about just sort of saying, let's just take a pause and see if there's a better way to do this that everyone could be happy with?
Thank you, Councillor Carlson, for that question. Now, majority of the individuals that I've spoken with, and specifically the group that had a Zoom meeting with that representation from multiple biking communities, hiking communities, the watershed, someone from the watershed community, or I guess watershed group, and other outdoor advocates, was that this pathway is, as far as a happy medium, I think it's the way that it is fine. Leave it the way that it currently is. But as part of, you had mentioned about a group together, and we spoke a lot to that. And when Councillor Kaufman had sent us that email earlier regarding a group working together with, I guess, with our administration, et cetera, I think at this time, to be very honest, it might be good to actually bring Councillor Kaufman's his amendment to or changes that he wants to the current resolution as it sits. If there's any other questions on the current, Mayor Spearman, or are you okay with that, Councillor Carlson?
Well, thank you for that, because that will open up, I think, a whole bunch more questions. I do have a second question then,
okay.
Because we've talked about pausing some projects in the past rather than just canceling them. If this project, and through you, Your Worship, to the city manager or delegate or designate, if this were paused, and I'm just going by some of the information I have here about a possible amendment till October 31st. Does that present any challenges in tendering? You said it's ready to go to tender. We've heard before that if you wait too long, a tender is kind of useless, but in just a shell pathway, I can't imagine there's be the same issues as with a full building. So is a pause on this to October 31st for a rethink, would that cause any issues with tendering as is, or as it's currently contemplated?
Point of order. I appreciate Councillor Carlson's question, but it is on the amendment that hasn't been introduced yet. Is it possible to introduce that amendment at this time and then Councillor Carlson hop back into line, perhaps while the city manager or designate are trying to find a response to that, just so that he understands the context around, that we all understand the context around October 31st presentation back?
I will withdraw my question until the amendment has been made.
Thank you. Councillor Higgin, did you have anything further to say, or are you ready for the amendment at this time?
Look at the amendments for sure.
Okay. All right. I'll ask Councillor Kaufman to bring forward
his... Point of order, Mayor.
Yeah.
Point of order.
Hello.
So, tell me about... We've had this lengthy discussion about this proposed rescindment of the project. Didn't we need to vote on this to actually add it to the agenda?
We did already. At the beginning.
Oh.
At the adoption of the agenda, we did.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that part.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll now deal with the amendment to the main motion from Councillor Kaufman. Rescindment, okay, I don't need to repeat the name of the motion, but be it resolved that the rescindment of Pathway 24 motion be amended to include the following clauses after the second operative clause. Further be it resolved that the city manager engage and consult with local groups that utilize the coulees to discuss a strategy, framework, and partnership around which local organizations and the city can create a unique experience in our river valley. And further be it resolved that strategies include, but not be limited to, ways to identify, sign, map, and maintain nature trails, while recognizing safety and preservation of our natural environment. And further be it resolved that City Council receive a joint presentation from community groups and the city manager on the consultation outcomes and proposed strategies for natural use of our river valley no later than October 31st, 2020. Councillor Kaufman, speaking to the amendment.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman, and hopefully this helps all my colleagues, especially Councillor Carlson, understand the intent behind this. Going off the main motion, this is actually then about what the next steps or next direction ought to be from Council to the City Manager. If you, Council recalls the many, many emails we've had on this from a variety of groups. This is really about sitting down to have a consultation or conversation with our park staff about what this area can look like. We have one of the largest areas of consolidated river valley in Canada. As municipalities go, we've got a real gem down here. So we've got the capacity to create available space for everybody. This is not about a select group or an elite group. This is about a different group of users. So I know that somebody who is in a wheelchair could actually not use this path because you come to a barrier of stairs, so it's not actually open for everybody. This is about the opportunity to create a unique experience or a different experience for a different group of people. But doing so, as the second operative clause, and here goes, through a strategic approach to it. It's about these groups coming together with staff to strategize. A lot of the people that are involved in these organizations actually participate in organizations in other communities, in Crow's Nest Pass and in Fernie, two that come to mind. And there are organizations there that actually work with their municipalities. It's more of a partnership. And in fact, there's some responsibilities that these organizations take on in terms of pathway maintenance and care. Some of the policing, they try to keep their quote-unquote rogue colleagues sorry, I was going to say on the straight path. That's not correct. They're responsible for actually making certain that this is not a spoiled area or spoiled opportunity. but to do so as well in a manner that actually recognizes safety, because we are an incredibly risk-averse organization, which is sponsors or supports our paternalism, I guess. But it's about recognizing safety and preservation of our natural environment, because we've got some beautiful undisturbed land down there as well, and working strategically, working in consultation with our community partners creates a different opportunity in just one area, of our river valley. So assuming that the main motion actually was going to continue without any amendments, this was about, okay, what is the other part of the strategy? Just canceling it doesn't solve the problem. As was identified by staff, we've got a lot of kilometerage of pathway down there. Well, is there some way that we can all kind of come together and have a conversation about something that's a little more coordinated, something that's easier to access, easier to understand where to go, how to go? We have a range of riders. Again, from emails, you'll see you've got a range of riders and a range of runners, a range of users that will actually access different trails. Imagine having a creative network down there, an understanding of where you can go, of how you can navigate the river valley. It's not about specialized or select or elite. It's just about different. And we can't always make everybody happy, and there's absolute truth to that. I think the one thing that all of this has actually emphasized to us is that we have challenges with the way we do our CIP in terms of messaging it not just to council but to the community, that we need to be looking at different public consultation processes, not just with CIP but with everything that we're doing. And we certainly need to learn to, in my humble opinion, work a little bit better with the community and be open to something different, a different model, a different way. So the amendment actually is proposing that we consciously, strategically sit down with local groups, and I haven't identified specific groups because this needs to be open to everybody. And that's the running, the cycling, the walkers, Indigenous community, anybody that actually has a desire or an interest to participate in that, with parameters around that perhaps, should be coming together. So that's the purpose of the amendment. I'll open it up to questions or debate.
Okay, questions on the amendment? We'll start with Councillor Higgin.
Thank you.
Point of order, Councillor Carlson, I don't know if his question is still out there.
Well,
yeah, that's fine. Councillor Carlson, if you want.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My question still remains then, rather than canceling the project, what the amendment seems to me is pause. And let's have a thoughtful moment where all of our community can ponder and can get together and come to an agreement. Canceling is completely different to me. So I'm wondering if they are mutually compatible, or if the mover would see this as pausing rather than canceling. The issues with pausing.
Thank you,
with respect to tendering.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Myself, I see this as, if we're just pausing it, we have not stopped the go-ahead or for this time of a shale path or a limestone path or whatever is in that particular previous resolution. If we are to engage with these other stakeholders, they will bring back a difference. It's not going to be what is currently in there, so that's why I'm saying for now to cancel that project, bring another one back as far as after having engagement with these other community groups, but it's not going to be what is there now. So cancel what is there now, in my opinion, have the community groups come forward, and it's going to be something different anyways. So if we were not to cancel it, I guess in Reader's Digest version, we're still going ahead with this particular pathway the way that it is.
So to clarify, you would not be in favor of the amendment?
Well, I still have on here, but what I don't understand, I still have on the resolution, I believe if we scroll down, is that not proceeding with Pathway 24 as part of D11 with the savings, I'm sorry.
Doesn't say to come back, it just says to cancel it, right?
Amended reflect this cancellation, yeah, further be resolved to reflect this cancellation. So that's still part of it then. Councillor Kaufman, I don't think that is to cancel it then, correct?
That is correct. I was assuming no amendments or any changes to the main motion, and so this is okay. If we're canceling it, what are we doing then? And instead of it just leaving it hanging, for me it was about proposing the amendment so that we're actually taking action around this. We're not just canceling it, walking away. We're actually still taking action.
Canceling the current deal.
Councillor Kaufman is amending the motion to have a consultation process instead of canceling the project and then bringing forward a separate motion for a consultation process, right?
No. No, I'm assuming that the main motion were to pass as is written, no amendments, cancel it, but have consultation, because consultation could actually create something different anyway, which is a new project which would have to come back to council. So this is about canceling what's being proposed, stepping aside, having conversation with the community, coming back in October and tell us what you found. And maybe the response is nothing.
So we have a practice that if we cancel a project in the CIP,
Exactly. I know that.
okay,
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, I'd like clarification on that. I think we're going down the same path that I'm thinking. So we're going to cancel this project, which was approved during the CIP. And what I'm hearing is that we're going to get engagement, and we're going to come back in October with another project, possibly, that council will vote on, which is, to me, it should be part of the CIP. So I'd like clarification if what we're doing is, because we normally, if it's a CIC project and we're canceling it, I don't know, is that what you were thinking, Mr. Mayor?
right, I thought it had to come back, if it's a different project, it has to
CIP.
come back to be reconsidered as part of the next CIP.
Thank you. Me too.
So that's I'm just trying to get clarification here, and I just wonder if we need an amendment to the main motion, or if we just let the main motion fly and pass the second motion. But I'm just trying to get clarification from the mover. Does he see this as a friendly amendment?
When I look at this, we're rescinding, but changing after it's been rescinded. So I like what it is, because that's been the discussion. I actually had a conversation with Deputy Mayor Kaufman, that's what we would like to see, but it may be a resolution to come forward after this. I'm open to suggestions and maybe some explanation from Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
So clarity from the mover. You think that the amendment confuses the motion and would rather see the motion stand on its own?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is on the floor. So from a procedural perspective, we have to deal with the amendment. The motion's already been introduced by the mover in writing. So the motion is on the floor for questions and then debate.
Mayor, I'm sorry if I may again. Is this not similar to what we did with one of the other 4 projects, which I think was correct, SAG, where their project significantly changed, therefore we didn't have to deal with it, we sent it to CIP. So I would like to know what it is we're doing here, because if we're sending it to CIP, that's I'm gonna vote one way. If we're just coming back with another project to replace this project, then I think I'm gonna use Mr. Hawkins' terms of flies in the face of the process. So I just need clarification.
Okay, I believe that you're correct, but I could be overruled. I see this as changing the CIP process if the amendment passes, but that's up to council. I'll just offer what my ruling is. Councillor Hagan, are you're in the queue? Are you speaking to the amendment?
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Councillor Parker, are you speaking to the amendment?
I know sometimes we have weird process. This is where I'm at. Just in the mover, that being Councillor Hagan, and then here's where I'm at. And this looks really bad on TV, but this is really, we're building a project that we approved. It's about to be done. Now we got a group of people who are like, whoa, 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 we don't want that. We don't want that. And isn't there a way of saying, oh, okay, maybe we missed something here. Okay, let's just move over here. What are some of your issues? How can we address it? How can we massage this? Can we make you happy? That's what I want. But I don't want to cancel the project. I don't want to cancel the project. But I also believe that if the amendment goes through, you're never going to make everyone happy anyway. So we're probably going to be doing this over and over and over again. So I'm trying to find, I would rather, this is my gut feeling is, table this. Let's have a discussion. Let's work out some stuff. Work with our administration. Find out where's the compromise. Where's the middle ground that we can come back in the resolution? Because I don't want to cancel it. But that's where I'm at. And I'm not speaking. I'm not asking questions. I'm just speaking out loud because I think the community has to understand what's going through my head. And I think it's important. That's why I'm confused. I'm very confused. I've been on council for 22 years. This is the most confusing, and this is the most difficult vote I've had to do in a long time. Because I think there's a lot of people that really want this project, and we're hearing from people that don't want it. So why can't we just say, okay, well, what's your problem here? What can we do to address it? And if not, so be it. But have we done our best to address their problem? That's what.
Thank you.
I'm just speaking out loud. I apologize for that.
Not a problem. City Solicitor, were you interested in providing some clarity to council on any of the procedural aspects?
Mayor Spearman, if I could, I just mentioned that I spoke with the city solicitor and just had the question of, it's forward there now, is if we rescind it, that's the exact, we're not changing it, so is it not, I guess, as far as the MGA goes, we're just removing it and there would be better to have a separate resolution because it's changing it too much? I just wanted to get some legal advice as far as if you have any for that.
Well, generally speaking, I'd start by saying my legal advice is trying to, once I understand the will of council, find ways to achieve what you want. So the question asked, if you want to rescind it, I think the clearest expression of a rescinding would be without the amendment. But if council's will is to achieve something beyond rescinding their original decision, then they'll need to consider additional language, or perhaps it would be more clear with a separate motion, just in terms of ensuring your legislative intent as a body is clear.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan.
Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Governance is hard and struggling is a good thing. Additionally, if you don't want something in a resolution, amend the resolution. So the intent and the spirit of the amendment is that we leave a community dangling. Because the resolution, the main motion says cancel it. And then what? So the purpose of the amendment is to show some leadership, show that we're listening, let's maybe have a conversation, and then come back in October. That's it. There's no commitment for funds, there's no commitment to dollars, there's no commitment for a new CIP. Something may come out of it, nothing may come out of it. I don't know. I can't presuppose that because it's a conversation between the community and our staff. That's the purpose of the amendment. So we are theoretically debating just an amendment right now. I believe the amendment is on the floor. I stand to be corrected on that, but I'm pretty sure we're debating the amendment. So to the wisdom of the amendment, it's about filling in that gap, because if we just pass the main motion, the community goes, okay, so now what? This is providing instruction to the city manager that council would prefer to have an engagement with this particular group, or these groups, or these individuals, or these citizens, whatever you want to call them, and have a conversation about what could it be. Remember at the beginning of our term, we had that saying, how can we? This is very much in the spirit of how can we, and what can we do differently, and how can we look at it? Come back in October and tell us. The reason October 31st is a date that resonates is because we're starting operating budget deliberations in November, and we're going to be going into capital projects next year. So this parks the money, it takes the money out of the play right now, and a new project could come forward. But I don't want to presuppose anything. This is just about not leaving our community dangling or hanging with no leadership, no strategy, no direction. Sit down and have a conversation about what it could be. That was the purpose of the amendment. And I apologize if it's confused people, but it's just about filling that gap of what's next.
Okay, Councillor Miyashiro.
Mr. Chairman,
Is that
since I can't see the amendment, can you read the operative clause one more time?
Of the amendment, okay. Well, there's three of them.
Okay.
Okay. So amend the resolution to include the following clauses after the second operative clause in the main amendment. Further be it resolved that the city manager engage and consult with local groups that utilize the coulees to discuss a strategy, framework, and partnership around which local organizations and the city can create a unique experience in our river valley. And further be it resolved that strategies include but not be limited to ways to identify, sign, map, and maintain natural trails while recognizing safety and preservation of our natural environment. And further be it resolved that City Council receive a joint presentation from community groups and the City Manager on the consultation outcomes and proposed strategies for natural use of our river valley no later than October 31st, 2020.
Okay, great, thank you. And so, just clarifying too for everybody that we're only taking pathway 24 out of D11. We're leaving the other components in.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So there are the other components to the pathway project as a whole that'll be left in.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Sorry. Okay. No. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. I just what happens with the $1.75 million that is assigned to this if there's a change? Does it just
not part of the amendment?
Oh, okay.
That's part of the main motion.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm being Parkered. I'm confused. Sorry. Okay.
No. Okay. Councillor Higgin.
Thank you. I do want to speak to the amendment, and obviously I guess that's where we are with the questions. If it is okay to continue the way that it is, I have no problem with it. I did indicate earlier that I thought it changed it too much, but I've had a conversation with our city solicitor, and he believes it is not illegal to do this, and so I do appreciate Councillor Coffins because that is something that I do want to do, but I didn't know if it changed it too much. So I'm okay to have it in there.
Councillor Morrow.
Mr. Mayor, is this still questions, or are we debating the amendment?
It's supposed to be questions.
Okay,
Okay. Councillor Carlson.
Thanks, Mayor Spearman. I'm just trying to decide whether my question is on the amendment or the main motion. Maybe I'll wait until the main motion.
Okay, there's no further questions on the amendment, so now we're moving to debate. Okay, Councillor Carlson?
No, I'll be on. I'll wait till the vote. I think.
Okay, Councillor Morrow. Debate on the amendment.
Debate on the amendment. So, as much as I usually have a lot of respect and agree with Councillor Kaufman, he indicated that by passing this resolution, if we don't pass this resolution, we're leaving the community hanging. I see this a little bit different. I see that if we pass this amendment, then we are leaving the community hanging, because we're not saying yes, proceed, and we're not saying no, cancel it, which is what we've been talking about for the last hour and a half. We've gone through this process twice. So we've had every opportunity twice, as I've mentioned several times. I think right now what we need to decide as council is what we were elected to do, and that's make tough decisions. And this one is tough because whatever way you vote, you're going to upset 50% and you're going to please the other 50. So in my mind, the way to not leave anybody hanging, the way to proceed, because this was part of our CIP project, we need to make a decision. So you're either supporting proceeding with the shale path, or limestone path, or whatever it is we're going to use, or you're going to support killing this project. And that's it, killing the project. The amendment, to me, does neither and only prolongs exactly what we will be discussing. What we're doing now, we're going to be doing it again later, because I think we've heard from everybody that we could possibly hear from. So I'm not going to support the amendment because I think, number one, it also flies in the face of, wow, that's the lingo of the day, flies in the face of our process. We did it with the Southern Alberta Art Gallery. Projects changed. This, to me, is going to come back with another project. I'm anticipating that's why we're doing it. If we're doing it to say no, then let's not do it. Then just let's put on our big boy pants and say no now. But if we're doing it and we're going to come back with another project, that totally changes the project, this project. And we did it with Southern Alberta Art Gallery, and so I'm not going to support the amendment that's been put forward.
Councillor Parker. Councillor Croson.
Thank you. This has been fascinating to listen to, just so you guys know, because there are so many different aspects of this. But it boils down to me, I will support the amendment because I don't know what this project should be. And I don't think we have done a thorough discussion of what this project should be. Talking to some people who are against the project, they were not aware that we had passed this in 2017. They thought they were discussing this with the Parks Department in the hopes of having a certain project come. There's certain parts they like the bridge, there's certain things they don't like. So I think we kind of do need a reset on this project so people can rediscuss it. I don't mind rescinding the project and doing this and continuing the discussion with full understanding that this project has to be balanced. We have to balance, the archaeological interests that are there, the environmental interests, the bikers, the walkers, everybody's interests have to be balanced, and I'm sure that's what the Parks Department has been working towards, but that hasn't worked, and I think we take one more kick at the can, do this in full understanding that it will be coming back to council, and that it is on this project, and so I am fine with the amendment, because this should always be the expectation, but let's do it in this respect. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much. I want to put some context to why I'm voting the way I am on this amendment. I really liked the original project. I thought it looked good. I thought our Parks Department did a great job in their presentation. But I'm also seeing a lot of opposition, a lot of confusion. And I do not want the original resolution, as it wasn't amended, would have passed. And so I'm trying to kind of like find the middle ground here, because if I'm not going to, if I want to keep the original project, but if I don't want it canceled. So this, I guess, is, I'm not happy with it, and I'm not disappointed with it. I'm just kind of like, I guess this is what it is. But I really believe that our administration did an excellent job in putting it together. But obviously there are some voices out there that felt that they weren't part of it. And so hopefully we can address it. But I still think at the end of the day, when it comes back, we're going to be sitting around here making the same conversation, and there'll be people that will be mad, and there'll be 100 emails coming to us, and then we'll be probably doing the same thing over again. So I'm just trying to find the middle ground, and I guess I'll support the amendment. Not with a lot of enthusiasm either.
Good. We'll count that as half a vote.
Yeah.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I may be the other half vote here. I echo some of Councillor Parker's thoughts, so I appreciate him going directly before me. I will be supporting the amendment because I do think in some of the letters, the emails, the conversations, the messages I've gotten is that people do want access, and they want community-wide access to this beautiful area. But they want a little bit more comfort, and that may be a little bit more input, and that's what I'd like to see. I will be struggling, if this passes, with the main motion to cancel, because as I see D11 wasn't specific projects. It was around community access and ongoing pathway system connections and extensions. And the whole purpose and justification about that is to allow our community access to these beautiful areas. There's no point in having these beautiful areas if they're inaccessible. And so I do support the amendment because I think perhaps there's a better way, or sometimes even just sitting down and having a good, thorough discussion with people, calmly and collectively, people can come to a good consensual agreement on things that not everyone will be thrilled, but everyone will be okay with. So I will be supporting the amendment, but I may have an amendment to the main resolution if this passes. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Your Worship. As George Washington once said, figure it out, Alexander. That's an order from your commander. But, just of course, we've all gotten the emails from the people who are opposed to this project, and when I think about all of the situations we've been in my term as a councillor, when you have people against, you automatically will get those who are for. In this case, I have, as Mr. Higgin has said, you know, I got nothing on saying, oh my gosh, how can you, you know, do this, not do this project? So, you know, and the nice thing about, from my experience at least, with the emails and with the phone calls that I received, is these people are very passionate. They want what they have there, and they love the area. But I also find that they're also ready for compromise, and I think they're also willing to accept some other thoughts about how to make things done. Because these people said, well, I've got some ideas. So I like the resolution that says we've got some ideas, and that we can make 95% of the people happy in that area. So that was Alexander coming back. No, so that's that. I approve, or I will endorse the amendment. Thank you.
Good, thank you. I appreciate the sentiment of the amendment. I think it would be cleaner to deal with it as a resolution by itself after we consider the main motion. I think that would provide clearer direction. So at this point, while I do appreciate the sentiment behind it, and I support additional public engagement to get clarity, I think we need to understand what the priorities are and what we can live with and what we can't, in terms of whether it's a limestone path, or if there are some bridges that require safety, that type of thing. But I think that needs to come back as a full report. So I do support the intent of the amendment, but I can't support it as an amendment. But I would support it as a separate resolution. So I won't be supporting the amendment, but I thank the mover for the intent. Councillor Higgin?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. For process here, I want to know if this amendment, sorry, it's a question, but I need to know this. Does this have to pass 2/3 as well on the amendment? No.
No, it would just be a majority on the amendment, and if it gets passed, the main motion as amended has to be passed by 2/3.
Thank you.
Your Worship, if you want to rule this motion out of order, that is your choice to rule it out of order.
No, it's tabled democratically, and we'll vote on the amendment. So.
Thank you. So just to continue, thank you, Mayor Spearman. I'm all over the map with this one. I'm trying to find the right way to do it, because I really like what getting the community engagement stuff. But what makes me nervous is that it's going to give the idea that this is not canceled. We're going to kind of continue on and do something and bring it back. And I think Councillor Morrow, as he had indicated in his debate, is that I think it is cleaner to rescind something that is forward, bring back his resolution, which I wholeheartedly support, and I think it's great, as you had mentioned, Mayor Spearman, what Councillor Kaufman has brought forward. So with that, I will not support this, although I understand the intent of it, the amendment.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak before I ask Deputy Mayor Kaufman to close? I see none. Deputy Mayor Kaufman, would you like to close on the amendment? Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman, and thank you to my colleagues for the debate and consideration. I think that the biggest concern, or one of the biggest concerns I have around the amendment, is that we risk nothing happening. I actually see the main motion passing. I'm doing the math in my head and kind of strategizing on how my colleagues feel. To put this in gets us a direction, and it doesn't leave us hanging for a couple of weeks. It doesn't leave anybody uncertain as to what the future is. It provides a very clear direction. I recognize that people can be uncomfortable with the amendment, but I would ask you to consider the fact that if the main motion does actually pass and we have the amendment in there, then we are actually taking the step forward. We are instructing the city manager to engage, and away we go. We continue the process, we continue the conversation. I don't think there's anybody in any of these groups, at least that I communicated with, that is under any illusion that we're doing the project or we're still going ahead, because the main motion states that we're not. As it currently stands, the main motion states that it's not. If, as one of my colleagues identified, you either support what's planned or you kill what's planned, think about how this would actually be the outcome if we do actually pass the main motion, which I'm hoping does, in its current or amended form. This is about setting the course for the next steps within our community. So I'd ask council to support the amendment. Call the question.
Question's been called on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment? Okay, Councillors Miyashiro and are you in favor?
In favor?
In favor.
Okay, the amendment passes. Opposed to the amendment? Okay. Okay, the amendment passes. We're now dealing with the amended motion.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a motion to table for 2 weeks so I can go over what I think the consequences of this resolution? I think an opportunity to ask questions behind the scenes and in front of the scenes, because this is a big decision. I think I would ask for it. I just need a second on the tabling.
Okay, the motion to table has come forward. We have a seconder. Generally, in the past, we've allowed people to consider for a couple of weeks. So not debatable, motion to table.
A point of order.
Okay.
As we heard from Mr. Hawkins, the tender is ready to go. Do we get reassurance from the city manager that that will actually sit in place until we come back to make a decision on this?
Yeah, I can't see the reason why that wouldn't be the case. Is that right?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Spearman.
Okay. So sometimes in the past, we've just said people need a couple of weeks to reflect. Sometimes do we just say that's okay, or do we vote on the tabling motion? Tabling motion's been introduced and seconded, right?
I didn't see a seconder yet.
Councillor Campbell.
So yeah, you would, the tabling motion takes precedence, so we are now voting on tabling the main motion as amended.
Okay. All right, motion to table has been introduced. All in favor of tabling? Councillor Miyashiro and Councillor Carlson?
Agreed.
So Councillor Miyashiro is in favor. Councillor Carlson?
No, I'm opposed.
Okay, opposed. All right, so in favor of tabling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed to tabling 1, 2, 3, 4. So the motion is tabled for 2 weeks. Who are you both opposed?
Roll call, please.
Okay.
Councillor Campbell.
Favor.
Councillor Carlson.
Agreed.
Okay. Councillor Crowson.
In favor.
Councillor Higgin.
Not in favor.
Councillor Morrow. Councillor Miyashiro.
Opposed.
Acting Mayor Parker.
Favor.
Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Opposed.
And Mayor Spearman.
In favor.
That carries, Your Worship, 5-4.
So the motion is tabled for 2 weeks. Hope everybody understands the motion as it is amended. So the main motion is to cancel the project but have a consultation process. We will debate that in 2 weeks. And now we'll move on to 6.2.
Point of order, Mayor Spearman. So it passed to have the amendment. That's what's coming back in 2 weeks after.
Right. Your main motion with the amendment that passed.
Come back in 2 weeks. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to 6.2, 2020 Paradise Canyon Open Event. Now, I'm sponsoring this motion. There was no other sponsor, so I brought it forward. Request for reassignment of funding to 2021. Councillor, Deputy Mayor Kaufman, did you want to read the motion because I'm sponsoring it?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I can do that. Members of Council, we have a motion in front of you, 6.2. Whereas on August 28th, 2017, City Council approved the request for $250,000 each year for 2018, 2019, and 2020 to assist with the hosting of the Mackenzie Tour Lethbridge Paradise Canyon Open. And whereas the response to the COVID-19 pandemic has imposed significant restrictions on gatherings in public places and has resulted in the closure of the Canada-US border, and whereas on May 25th, 2020, Community Issues Committee received a presentation with regards to the postponement of the 2020 Lethbridge Paradise Canyon Open in 2021. Therefore, be it resolved that City Council rescind the decision of August 28th, 2017 to provide funding to the Mackenzie Tour Lethbridge Paradise Canyon Open in the amount of $250,000 for the year 2020. And further be it resolved that City Council authorize the reassignment of $250,000 from the Municipal Reserve Stabilization Reserve for the 2020 Lethbridge Paradise Canyon Open to the proposed 2021 Lethbridge Paradise Canyon Open. And further be it resolved that Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign and seal any amending agreements and any supporting documents. Mayor Spearman.
Thank you very much. The intent of the motion is that we made a 3-year commitment to the Mackenzie Tour and the hosts. We made a 3-year commitment of $250,000 a year. Obviously, due to COVID, they were unable to conduct the tournament this year. And this motion simply, in a very wordy way, moves the $250,000 that's already been committed from 2020 to 2021. And that is the spirit and intent of the motion.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Madam Clerk, do you have anybody in line for questions?
I have Councillor Campbell and Councillor Morrow.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell first.
Thank you. I just, for clarification for me, the $250,000 originally came from the Major Events Fund?
Councillor
Back originally.
From the MRSR Reserve.
Oh, this never came from major events. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morrow.
Thank you. This is in our current operating budget, which ends when?
Our current operating budget is 2019 to 2022. So this was back in, I believe it was 2017, and it was for 18, 19, and 20.
Sorry, say that one more time. So this was in our current operating budget.
Our current operating budget
is 20 from what year to what year again?
2019 to 2022.
Okay, and so this was approved in the operating budget prior to those 4 years?
That's correct. This was approved in August of 2017, and it was for the years of 2018, 2019, and 2020.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Anybody else in the queue? Okay, hearing or seeing none for questions, we'll move to debate. Mayor Spearman, you've opened, correct? Any debate on this motion? Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. When I look at this proposal, I have only one number that comes in my head, and that's the number 60. And with forgiveness for my math, that is 60 families, 60 households, because when we take the average tax rate for a household in Lethbridge, it's relatively $4,000. So $250K is relatively households for 60 families. And again, as we're here in this pandemic, in the recovery, in what we're looking at, you know, I would be happy to put $250K back in MRSR, so I will be voting against this resolution.
Anybody else? Councillor Morrow.
Well, I didn't support this when it came back in the operating budget for the 3 years because I just didn't feel that this was the way to spend taxpayers' dollars. So I won't be supporting the extension.
Councillor Parker, sorry, Acting Mayor Parker.
Thank you very much. Well, I will be supporting the resolution. The last 2 years, it was a huge success, and it's been growing. And it's too bad that it can't happen this year, but I do believe all Mackenzie Tour events have actually been canceled right across Canada. So once again, it's part of the economic development, similar to the Briar, to a smaller scale, of course. But it's something that we have hundreds of volunteers who put their time and effort, and it's stuff that's not charged back to the city, but it's an investment in their community that these people put into it. Mr. Sakamoto has once again put the course out there in the limelight, and it's always been celebrated, so I can't imagine us saying no to this for next year. And I don't know ongoing what we're going to do, but as a city, we did commit this year, and I think we should follow through and commit for them next year. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, nobody else in line? Okay, to close, Mayor Spearman.
Yeah, it is an investment in economic development. When the tournament's on, as we heard last week during the presentation, hotels are full. The golfers are using the hotels, they're using the restaurants. There is an economic development benefit. So all we're doing is deferring it from 2020 to 2021 for obvious reasons. And for all other reasons, the money that for any major event, whether it be funded through the Major Event Hosting Grant or through the MRSR, there are economic development, there are benefits to taxpayers in the community who operate businesses, and therefore I would encourage support for this resolution.
Thank you. A reminder to council that this is a rescinding motion, so it requires a 2/3 vote to pass or 6. Call the question. All those in favor? Do a roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Councillor Miyashiro.
Favor?
In favor?
My fault, I changed it up.
Councillor Campbell responded for you, Councillor Miyashiro, so can you state
I
your
heard
own...
that, but I don't even know what to say about that.
Can you state your vote, please?
In favor?
In favor. Councillor Morrow? Councillor Higgin? Councillor Croson?
Opposed.
Councillor Carlson?
Agreed.
That's in favor?
In favor.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell?
Who, me? Yes, in favor.
Acting Mayor Parker?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Kaufman?
In favor.
Mayor Spearman?
In favor.
Carried 6-3.
Thank you. Does council wish to have a 5-minute bio break again? Sorry, I'll turn it back to you to actually ask that question.
Sure.
I'd like a 5-minute bio break, please, Mayor Spearman.
Okay, we're going to take.
I'll let Councillor Campbell
We're going to
answer.
take a 5-minute break. Hopefully, we'll see you back here at 4:40. Okay, we're almost at the halfway point. Okay, 6.3, Lethbridge Transit Accessoride On-Demand Transit and Operations. Moved by Councillor Higgin. Whereas Council previously passed resolutions on November 25th, 2019, directing the City Manager to explore revised accessoride eligibility criteria and levels of service while taking into consideration the Transit Master Plan recommendations presented to Council on June the 25th, 2018, providing options for City Council and proceed with the development of an on-demand transit system and report back to City Council no later than June the 1st, 2020. And whereas the April 27th, 2020 Community Issues Committee Transit presentation did not address all the opportunities for improved efficiency identified by KPMG in their operational review. Therefore, be it resolved that Council direct the City Manager to explore the impact of the AAR eligibility criteria changes on the existing registered clients and other opportunities to address capacity issues and service levels, and report back by September the 1st, 2020. And further be it resolved that Council direct the City Manager to develop a more detailed on-demand transit system that includes specific information related to the actual service model, customer access processes, infrastructure changes, mapping, and hours of service by September 1st, 2020. And further be it resolved that City Council direct the City Manager to explore opportunities for improved efficiency related to attendance management, fleet configuration, and transit maintenance. Councillor Higgin?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Gosh, I'm glad I actually wrote notes down for this because I think my brain after the first half of our meeting has been melted, and so I'm glad that I've actually got the notes, and I'm going to read kind of a verbatim on this if you don't mind. So I want to give a little bit of an opening and background to this. The intent of this resolution is to ensure due diligence with regard to completing the operational review for transit, to ensure that we have considered and evaluated all opportunities for improved efficiency in the transit department. So just a little bit of background. On July 17th, 2017, the Transit Master Plan recommendations were presented to Council. October 31st, 2019, the KPMG Operational Review Report, which clearly identified 4 opportunities for improved efficiency, was presented to Council. November 25th, 2019, Council put forward 2 resolutions that directed the City Manager to, number 1, explore revised accessoride eligibility criteria and service level while taking into consideration the Transit Master Plan recommendations presented to Council on June 25th, 2018, providing options for City Council no later than June 1st, 2020. And number 2, proceed with the development of an on-demand transit system and report back to City Council no later than June 1st, 2020. April 27th, 2020, Transit Administration presented their operational review presentation to the Community Issues Committee. To date, the city has expended a significant amount of time, resources, and tax dollars to review, evaluate, and plan with the goal to improve transit services and efficiency. So as council, we have not only an obligation to ensure that we have done our due diligence and fiduciary duty to the taxpayer to ensure value for their money. With that, I will open it up for questions.
Questions? So far, I have none in the queue, so I might have to think of some. I guess my overall question is we had a transportation study come to council more than 2 years ago, and then we've had the operational reviews come, and there are recommendations. In the spirit of looking at value for money and possible savings for taxpayers, because we understand that the transit system is underwritten by taxpayers to the extent of about 90%. I think what taxpayers and maybe members of council want to know is when will we actually see savings implemented? If we defer this again to September the 1st, 2020, when will we have concrete proposals coming forward to achieve savings and efficiencies in our transit system?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. You know what? As you know, I'm not one that really enjoys kicking the can down the road again and again, as we've already seen over the past while. But in this particular scenario, I think it's better to do it right than right now. I've seen that there's some questions and concerns that I had that will be passed on, and some of the questions that will be passed on to administration as I was finishing some of those questions here this morning. So to give them the opportunity to reply to those, I thought an additional time, just so that we get this done correctly, would be best. I have spoken with Mr. Vanden Heuvel here last week, had a meeting with Mr. Vanden Heuvel and went over some of these questions and concerns, and went over a little bit of this resolution. And I think in his, to paraphrase, it will give sufficient time to get that information back to us.
Thank you. Councillor Morrow?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few, and maybe I need a little bit of clarification first, because I think in the KPM, and I'm going to send this to the city manager. In the KPMG report, they talked about attendance management, and also the CIC presentation referenced attendance management. But in my mind, there wasn't any clear recommendation as to how to address attendance management. So two things come to mind. First of all, maybe I should get an explanation as to what attendance management is, because I think I know what it is, but I'd like to make sure I'm on the same wavelength as you. So question one. Question two, I'm assuming that is a little bit of a problem, not only in transit, but mostly could be in many departments, because I relate that to overtime. And number three, why weren't there any recommendations regarding that at the presentation when it was in the KPMG and also CIC presentation?
I'll ask the Director of Community Services to speak to the first 2 and 3 if you want, but I'll jump in at the end.
Thank you for the question. So attendance management basically deals with making sure that we have all available staff available for work for the regular scheduled shifts. When we run into situations where people are away sick for whatever reasons, or they're not able to come to work, then it does result in exactly what you described, which is overtime, which is a pressure on the budget. So one of the things that we are going to be looking at is the attendance management system and how it's implemented, how it's reported on, what are the steps that go through that process. You'll also recall in November 25th of 2019, when the operational reviews were presented, we brought forward, with the assistance of the city manager, a lot of those recommendations from the KPMG report that were clearly council's purview as far as service levels, et cetera, right? And the specific resolutions were written about that on access ride, on-demand transit. And then there was a further resolution that required the city manager to report back on every 6 months on any of the overall administrative recommendations for operational efficiencies from the KPMG report. And I believe the first report was provided by former city manager Jody Melly. So those ones are administrative in nature. This resolution here clearly tells us to bring those back by the 14th. So we'll get, not only in the semi-annual reporting, we'll bring back any specifics that we have on attendance management at that time.
I would simply add that I'm not familiar with the degree of absenteeism and where we sit in terms of the process of implementing attendance management. But I would simply say that it's something that's well within our ability to do regularly in all parts of the organization. So it's pretty routine to have and implement an attendance management program. If council wishes to be made aware of how that's going, what sort of targets we've set, how we're approaching that, then I think this does, as the Director of Community Services said, give us an opportunity to come back and explain that to you. But it's routine. That's just something that should be, that should be done.
Oh, okay, so am I right though, Mr. Vanden Heuvel or Mr. City Manager, in thinking that this attendance management does go hand in hand with absenteeism and reflects overtime? So do we have an issue with that in our transit department, or is that not even an issue?
Traditionally, we have had an issue with that. I've answered those questions anytime that Haley's provided the financial forecasts or any issues out of the annual reports. So we've been aware of this issue. During the first part of 2020 here, and particularly as a result of COVID. We have had excellent attendance, right? But we are aware that we have had attendance management issues in transit in the past, and we are prepared, as the city manager said, to continue to make sure that our system of dealing with it brings the results that we're looking for, which is making sure we have a healthy workforce available for their regular scheduled shifts.
That'll all come back as part of this resolution.
As clause 3 in that resolution, it's requesting us to come back and speak specifically to that, in addition to the semi-annual reporting that we do as a result of that administrative resolution that was passed on November 25th.
Mayor, thank you. I'll hop out for now. I have others, but I'll...
Okay. Councillor Higgin?
Fourth here, okay. Question I have is in the CIC presentation on page 18, it references to Transit Master Plan concepts utilized. These include enforcement of no-shows, continuous stakeholder engagement, and development of performance indicators. I'd just like to know if these things have been done over the past 3 years, or it's something that we're working on. Where are we at with that? And again, some of these questions, and my apologies, I like to get them usually prior, but they've kind of come at, last moment. But if you can answer them, I'd appreciate it.
I think that question was asked during that presentation, but I have Kevin Ponick, the transit manager, here with me, and he can address any of those specifically.
Councillor Higgin, so on the KPI or the KPIs, we are always striving to report back on those and improve. So we have went down the road of starting to enforce more the no-show policies. We did an update on the handbook and sent it out to all Access-a-Ride clients, so they're well aware of the rules. What has happened in the past is I think they've signed up for Access-a-Ride and they weren't absolutely clear, so we've started a little bit of a program started up where we actually go to our major groups, either the dialysis group or Bridges, and we actually do sit down with the people and the representatives of those major groups and actually go through the handbook with them and basically tell them exactly how Access-a-Ride works, how the no-show policy works, and we're a little more clear on rather than just sending out a mailer and expecting the people to read it. So we're doing the face-to-face talks with them now, so they're well aware of it, and we are enforcing more of the no-show policies.
Give me an example here of usually how many times do you show up at someone's place if it's a no-show? They might have a constant every Monday, I pick up at 9:30 in the morning or whatever. At what point currently do we deal with, hey, 3 strikes you're out, or 4 strikes, or 5 or 6, because they're still needing that transportation. So I'm just wondering how we.
Yeah, there is a number set, Councillor Higgin. However, I'm not right off the top of my head. I can't remember what the number is. But what we do is we have to take into a kind of a reasoning that some of our clients have cognitive abilities, and so sometimes it's their care providers that have dropped the ball, and it's not any fault of their own. So we give a little bit of leniency on those individuals.
Right. And okay, and just maybe kind of further to this, if I could, Mayor Spearman, I don't know if you want me to hop out or if I have another question.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Actually, before you begin, sorry, Mayor Spearman, I should have declared this at the beginning. I actually have a Section 170 conflict with this. Our son uses Access-a-Ride, so I should excuse myself from the conversation. Thank you.
So one of the slides, it indicates legal concerns and implications. So is this a huge concern now, or are we anticipating that it could be a concern?
It would be an anticipation.
An anticipation.
Yes.
So further to that, so again on this page 20 of the CIC presentation, it says set eligibility requirements with a tiered system. So my question would be is how would a tier system affect or impact our existing users? Are we going to go through the whole, our current users, or is there a grandfather in, or are we going to go through the whole process and then, because I'm just wondering how that's going to play out.
So within the presentation there, you can see that we came up with a price. I think it was actually in the questions of how much it would cost us to go through the entire clientele of Access-a-Ride and do the eligibility criteria on all of them. One of the problems that we foresee is if we grandfather people in, what happens to all the people that can't get on that are, like, have a more, I guess, a better case to be on accessoride, and they can't get on because there's no room there, because present clientele have got on because of the easier eligibility criteria that was set 10 years ago.
So everybody is going to go through this eligibility then, including
That's what we'd be looking at.
Because that was my concern about how that's going to help with efficiency, if that's what we're looking at doing, how we're going to deal with that.
Yes, we're looking at putting everybody through it.
Do we have any idea how long that would take?
The consultant, actually, when we phoned the consultant, they never gave, they said it about 2 hours per client is the normal, but they says some of them do take longer and some of them do take less time, because it's really clear if they're like eligible or not. They go through the whole process, and that's why we put forward that we would look at a occupational therapist, somebody that was trained to actually evaluate these individuals.
And just the follow-up to that, it's just a follow-up, sorry, Mayor Spearman, if I may. So with this eligibility, we'll have this occupational therapist, for example, if that's a route that we go down. Now, often there may be someone that comes with a doctor's slip, which kind of trumps, excuse the terminology, the occupational therapist, I would think. So have you been able to navigate through this to this point?
So that's one of the reasons that we're going after an occupational therapist, because right now, that's what's happening with a lot of our clients, is they're going to their doctor and they're saying, I don't really feel comfortable driving or walking to a transit stop. Can I get a doctor slip that says I can take accessoride? And so there is no testing, no analysis of it. It's a doctor basically looking after their patient and saying, yeah, I can give you a slip because it's easier for you, where an occupational therapist will actually look after the city's interests too, and they'll be under contract for us to make sure that the testing is regular and is basically really standardized for everybody.
Occupational therapist will take precedent over a doctor's slip then, from the sounds of it.
Unless the doctor's slip can show evidence that the occupational therapist's evaluation was incorrect.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our Community Services Director has been wanting to provide clarification, so please go ahead.
Thank you. I think, Councillor Higgins, some of your questions are in the consent agenda. You'll see a summary of the questions were asked during the presentation and the responses from administration back to council, dealing with the KPIs, dealing with some of the issues that you're raising. If I understand your first clause is to us to explore the impact of the eligibility criteria on the volume of riders on accessoride and what happens there to addressing the capacity issues and all that. So my understanding of this resolution, in line with the questions that you're asking, is we go back and we model this for you so that you can clearly see, if you vote in favor of one way or another, what the impacts will be. We're not going and operationalizing anything at this point. This resolution sends us back to do further work. Is that my understanding correct?
So to operationalize it, you don't find that these things that we're discussing with AAR are important to be used in coming back with a solution?
Exactly, but we need that time period rather than saying we're not in a position to be making a decision on operationalizing this tomorrow. We need to go through all the considerations you had raised and bring back further some of the questions that were asked in the information that was in your consent agenda. So this resolution will when we come back, I think you're asking for the 14th. We will have answers and clarity for these questions, as well as what the impact will be, to give you better information for a future decision.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Hey, Councillor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Question about accessoride eligibility as well. Just wondering, when you start developing the criteria and the format and the framework, are you intending to involve the disability sector? I believe they're the highest users after the schools of accessoride. Is that correct?
That is correct, and anything that we look at would include how the provision of services is provided and what the eligibility criteria in those comparative transit properties, as well as specifically our community and who it is that we work with, who are the day-to-day users of our accessoride system. So it would be in conjunction of both.
Because it seems to me, because I worked in that sector before, that there seemed to have been a carryover from the school system, that it was the community's responsibility to get people to their day programs and services, rather than a support agency helping them to get around. And I think maybe that's something that needs to be looked at fairly closely, is that the city and Accessoride has taken on that responsibility, and I'm not sure if that's necessarily what needs to happen. So is that something you look at in terms of working with or having those hard conversations with the disability support organizations?
Absolutely, because those are the individuals that are currently using our accessoride system. And so to come up with a system and just simply apply a revised set of criteria without consultation with them and working together with them is not going to result in a favorable situation for anybody. So they must be at the table with us as we devise this.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
And when we're discussing it with the stakeholders, I think clearly, are we going to express this level of service that we are providing right now can't be maintained? We have to be more in line with what's provided in other communities?
Correct. You'll recall that we looked at the level of service, and KPMG identified that our level of service is particularly high. We looked at some of our comparative properties and decided which ones more closely aligned to how we offer things in Lethbridge. And now this resolution put forward will send us further down that path to find out how did they do it, who did they do it together with, what was the result on the capacity, the scheduling. I think we will also see a shift upcoming in our utilization of the school boards on Accessoride as they now move to taking overall responsibility for all student transportation. So we've got some scenarios to plan together and look at those communities that model the same of us, and if there's anything else there that's unique and different that we can bring forward to council for consideration as a service level.
Thank you. For clarification, then the school boards would pay the full cost of the accessoride service that they access?
My last conversation with the school boards regarding transportation for school students is when we are out of the school busing business, we are out in totality, and that they would work with a service provider for any of those that require special needs as well as the conventional school busing.
Thank you. Councillor Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just further to the accessoride as well. So we're talking about clients, and do we keep track, and do we know how many registered clients we have with accessoride? Is that something that we keep tabs in, or?
So the client level goes up and down in accessoride on a regular basis. Right now, we're averaging about 1,600 regular riders. So we do have some riders that won't use accessoride for a certain amount of time, and then all of a sudden they will phone in and say, I need a ride. So we keep them on the books. So right now we have approximately 1,600 clients registered.
So the reason I'm asking that is because it was brought to my attention that sometimes riders use and need accessoride. I break my leg or I break my back and I'm out for a year, so I need to use accessoride. So now I'm registered, or whatever the term you guys use, and I'm one of your clients. But now I'm healed, a year or two later, and I don't need accessoride anymore, but I'm still probably considered a registered client in your books. Is that true, or do you monitor that, and do you look and say, okay, well, this guy's healed, he doesn't need it, so off you go? Because 1,600 seems like a lot.
Yeah, we look at it, but right now we keep them on the books. If you can remember the CIC report, we actually had stated that that's the tiered system we want to look at, is the conditional and the unconditional ridership. So the conditional or the temporary. The temporary would be I fell down and broke my leg, and I need accessoride for the 3 months while I'm healing. One of the other ones is sometimes people need the conditional ones where it says, I can't walk to a bus stop during the winter months, so I only need accessoride for the winter months, and that's why we're looking at a tiered system for that.
So we're going to revisit that, because you may even have somebody that's passed away.
We usually, yes, we do look at that. One of the things that we do is we try to stay up to date with the clients, and we usually know on the regular clients quite quickly because we see the no-shows, and the drivers, they are really personable with all their clients, and they do know that all of a sudden somebody has passed on and then they can't use accessoride, or they're just unable to access the service anymore. Because
at one of the previous council resolutions, I think one of the directions to the city manager was different options for accessoride, the service levels. And I think that was also talked about at the CIC presentation. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I picked up that there was 2 options. One of them was a reduction of, 35 to 40%, and another one was an even further reduction. To me, that's only one option. That's a reduction in service. Is there any other, are there any other recommendations that might come from that? Other than reduction in service?
We had the eligibility criteria, and with that, we were hoping that with the eligibility criteria put in place is that possibly we could move some of those clients onto accessible transit instead of accessoride and have some savings there.
I have still a few more, but I'll hop out, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, Councillor Higgin.
Mayor Spearman, I've noticed in the CIC presentation as well that our AAR buses have usually two wheelchair positions. And so, sorry, the question again, have 2 wheelchair positions. Now, a few of the different conferences that I've been to, they've demonstrated ones that have 3, sometimes 4 wheelchair positions. My question would be, quite often we find that you'll have 2 going to one location. So for efficiencies, have we looked at what type of buses that we're using for accessoride as far as being able to have maybe more wheelchair positions on those buses?
So our accessoride fleet, actually, we have more than 2 wheelchair positions on them.
Okay.
We do have several positions on there. I think it's up to 6 on our bigger ones.
On the bigger ones.
Yeah. So on our regular transit fleet, there is 2 dedicated wheelchair positions on the conventional transit fleet.
And on the others?
On the accessoride, we can hold up to 6.
Up to 6 on accessoride?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess I have a question for the city manager or designate. With respect to accessoride users, the number seems to constantly creep up. Would it be possible to get a historical data on the number of accessoride users? I think going back 20 years, it seems like when we changed from a private system, what was called Lethbridge Handybus, to Lethbridge Transit Accessoride, the numbers seem to be increasing, and they seem to continue to increase. And I think the data itself maybe would be revealing simply to say how many accessoride users are there as a percentage of the population, because that number just seems to continually increase, which indicates that along with the fact that our accessoride usages are far higher than other communities, we don't seem to be having a way to manage the problem. Could we get that historical data? Number of accessoride users by year?
So, Mayor Spearman, I'm not sure how far back we can go that quickly. Just talking to Kevin, he believes like 2012 forward. So going back 20 years, we wouldn't have that. But mapping the data as a percentage of the population, we could look at the usage and where the capacity issue really hits. And I think Councillor Miyashiro's question earlier is who's using accessorized and how they are using it between a scheduled system or a subscription system, and making sure that we can manage across that, right? So if we start to reduce have some providers provide some of their transportation. HS and the dialysis made a significant impact. So we'll use all of that data to say, this is how we got to where we are. Here's some suggestions of how we can make sure that we implement a tiered system, a criteria system, an evaluation process, utilization of third-party contracted professionals to do assessments, and then monitor and report on the progress as we go forward.
Thank you. Councillor Morrow, you had some more questions?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. As far as the fleet configuration and maintenance of fleet, like I've always wondered, and again, it's not only on transit, but we're talking about transit, because in my mind, I think we spend a lot of money on city fleet, including transit buses, and I think we need to ensure that the taxpayer is getting full value based on the life cycle of these buses. So are we paying increased cost to keep equipment that maybe is a little bit, poor or run down on the road until the replacement dates? Like, how do we, is that something that I'm hoping I will get back, when you come back, if this resolution passes? Because I'm concerned about that, and I think I might have had a discussion about that with the previous city manager about our fleet. So, do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, and just for clarification from a taxpayer's perspective, if you refer to your budget page with regards to transit, you'll see that there's grant funding in and then asset transactions. So the purchase of the actual fleet itself is mechanized through grants received from other levels of government. The operations are there that result in whatever the pressure on the tax base is. So we manage a fleet with a sufficient amount of a fleet and a shop to make sure that we have a sufficient amount of redundancy in the system, utilizing the fleet planning for transit to make sure that we can maintain the service levels that are out there. So we can certainly bring that and explain how the fleet works as well. But the focus previous was really upon the operational impacts, and so maintenance is one of those areas which will be looked into, as whatever efficiencies we can find in that area as well.
Because, correct me if I'm wrong, I remember having this discussion with, as I said, the previous city manager, and I think he even maybe picked up on it once he first arrived here. We seem to have like newer, and maybe it's because, every 7 years or every 10 years, we need to replace it because that's the policy, but they could be in great shape because, whatever. So I just want to make sure that we get our life cycle, and we get value for our unit, like.
Our fleet planning, our scheduled maintenance, all those things happen on a continuous basis in that shop. They have the metrics and all that type of stuff. What we had brought back in the CIC presentation for council's consideration was two areas: accessoride, because that's what the specific resolution said, to go explore the accessoride criteria and look for efficiencies there, and on-demand transit. So those were the two resolutions coming from November 25th that council put forward specifically for council to make future decisions upon service levels and how we can realize some operational efficiencies. All the other stuff that you're talking about as far as maintenance and absenteeism and everything, that is part of our ongoing efforts on managing performance, making sure that we're doing the right things. That's the stuff that gets reported back in the other resolution, but with Councillor Higgins' proposed resolution, he's identified specifically that he wants to have some more additional information on those items specifically, as item 3 dictates right there.
Okay, just another one. So, because there's two numbers here that I need to make sure I understand, because a couple of them seem extremely high to me. Like the 1,600 clients was one that I thought we were like at 500 or 600, but that's okay. I got my answer to that. And the mayor made a reference that transit is subsidized to the tune of 90% or thereabouts. I do recall at one time back in my earlier days here that I thought that we were at like a 70%. Have we really climbed? Because if we've climbed to what the mayor is saying, 90%, then what you're telling me about efficiency and effectiveness and using whatever kind of KPIs seem to be going the wrong direction.
If, I don't have that number right in front of me right now, but if you go back to the April 27th presentation, I provided a few introductory slides in there that broke down what the cost and what the tax support for transit is. You'll find the answer of that percentage in that slide deck.
Okay, so you couldn't tell me right now, again, I'm going back.
I can't, not without taking some time to dig through and find that and go through, no.
So
But
you, okay, well, let me ask the
you've got
question.
the answer in the previous presentation.
So if I look at the presentation, will I be able to find that what I use when I take the bus, I'm gonna pay my $3 or $3.25 or whatever it is today. I've got a Breeze card, so I don't know what it is. Maybe it's $3.75. But my understanding is that the actual cost of that would be like $10.50.
Yeah, you'll find that.
That's in there?
Specifically in that presentation. If you need help finding it, I can work with you later on finding it specifically.
Okay, so all of this resolution will cover all these things, these questions that we're asking, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we have somebody taking all notes about the questions that you're asking now. We had notes taken on the questions that you asked at the April 27th CIC. In your consent agenda package, we had responded to those questions. We'll have responses to these questions. We'll be back on the 14th of September with further detailed information with new data information, and hopefully on the 21st, Council will be in a position to make an informed decision that affects both accessoride and our conventional transit system.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Higgin.
Great. Last question here. You gonna be time to have a break, right, Tony? You're gonna need a break real soon. So, question, in the CIC presentation, had two components of the on-demand system. So we had area of coverage and frequency of service. Obviously, that was spoke to. And as I was trying to scan through the notes that were in our that you had indicated to Joe, I couldn't see these, or to Councillor Morrow. It references 75 bus stops at $250,000, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, and 10 buses. Now, do we know? We've got a contractor that we work in partnership with for these bus stops and stuff. Is this what would cost the city of Lethbridge, or is this a cost that I think it's Pattison or something that we're using in partnership for these bus stops? Do we spend that, or is that this partner that we have?
So the costs that were presented there was like, and if you go back to the original resolution from November, it talked about come back with what a pilot program for on-demand transit would look like. And I believe Mr. Greco at the time explained the different scenarios. And in one of those scenarios, he talked about if we were to move to an on-demand system on the west side, there would be, now when you talk about the stops, you're talking about an entire system. You're talking about the accessibility, the benches, the signage, the wayfinding, the programming into the route systems. All of that is included in the cost that Scott talked about. Now, if those shelters are put up and benches have advertising things on there, that is the component that's handled through Pattison and in conjunction with them. But we still have to go through and make sure that our stops are to our current stop standard.
And so all of our buses that we have, the new ones, old ones, will all have the what do they call them, the data systems that they use, the hardware that they use, and the software they use. In case one breaks down, we pull another one up, and it still has all of that on these new buses.
So to go through a pilot program for on-demand transit, first we have to identify an area. I believe the recommendation that was brought forward at that CIC was to start on the south side, and the shading of that particular time. Start at a particular point in time and make sure that we had the buses with the proper hardware, software, and ability to manage a on-demand type system. But you'll also, so in there, we did some calculations of, hey, what would that look like instead of running transit the conventional way that we're doing right now? Certain areas, they might have to walk a little bit farther. The frequency, it's not a direct route system any longer, all those types of things. So we're confident we can find some savings, but this resolution here says, go back, make it very, very clear of where we are going, because we got to do a pilot, measure, assess, reevaluate, and either expand, discontinue, and that type of stuff. So we have to be able to get a pilot process in place so we can come back to council and say, look, we've done this for a year, a full year cycle, and here's our findings and here's the impact on it.
So that all that information, we'll have in CIC, a little more information on that
Yeah.
on-demand system, then we'll come back at that time. Thank you.
Councillor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Mr. Van den Heuvel, in Councillor Higgins' resolution, the first clause about service levels for Accessoride, would you include looking at the dispatch system and some of the issues riders and organizations have experienced with that system?
Councillor Miyashiro, if the dispatch system is found to be a bottleneck in the existing system, it would make sense for us to look at it, examine it, and see if there's alternate ways to deliver a dispatch or the booking or the so with all that whole system would be looked at, not just who's on the bus and what size of bus. We would have to look at the system because it works in a system manner.
Okay. I'm just saying, because I think if you engage the organizations as you said you would, they will tell you some stories about how the booking system has left them baffled. So thank you for saying you're going to engage them.
No, happy to. And we're as aware as council, heading into the KPMG operational reviews, we had a lot of phone calls and inquiries and follow-ups to do on the Accessoride system. So we're happy to go in there and look at the system in its totality, as well as what other communities are providing. And like you said previously, those that we're serving today are going to have some answers for us that are worth consideration for sure.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes all the questions in the queue. We'll now move on to debate. Councillor Higgin.
I'll save for closing if there's anyone else that's not.
Any further debate? Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Transit is sort of the first group that's in front of us with KPMG and a resolution. So some of the things I say will apply to every department that has come to us or will come to us. And one of the things I would like our departments to know about these resolutions, or when we send something about KPMG, is KPMG has helped us to underscore that there are things that are not working as efficiently and effectively as they could be. And I see the KPMG reports as a chance to look at opportunities for using taxpayers' money more efficiently and delivering to people in Lethbridge the services they want, need, and expect. The KPMG recommendations aren't perfect. There are mistakes in some of the data they had. There's certain things that aren't great. But what I'd like to see when those KPMG recommendations go to the departments and when the departments come to us is look at the recommendations, improve them, use them as a catalyst for thinking about how things can be done better. Our staff live and work in Lethbridge. They know the problems here. And what I would like to see is help us solve some of the problems. Now, I was thinking of doing a resolution for transit, and I apologize, my resolution would have been do better. Like that was my whole resolution, because I think there are things that could be done a lot better. In the Accessoride presentation, it was mentioned several facilities are buying their own handy buses. Would it be better to have those organizations write grants, help them to write grants so they own and operate their own buses? Then we could focus our handy buses, our Accessoride, on different services. Would that work? Don't know. Love to see if we actually did some research into that. We had a presentation or discussed today the accessibility needs of getting people into the parks. I'm fascinated that we talk about accessibility, but we still don't have a transit bus that goes into the parks, which would give greater accessibility than a $1.8 million pathway built at the far south of Lethbridge. What are we looking into that? We have 5,000 plus employees who work downtown. Employee parking is often one of the greatest challenges we're faced with. We have for 60, 50 years tried to change behaviors with parking downtown through financial penalties of parking fees and fines. Other communities solve those issues in different ways. Some have actually solved it through transit. Have we talked to the BRZ? Have we talked to Lethbridge Centre, downtown workers? I don't know if it's an answer, but for me, we should see the KPMG reviews as a recognition that something isn't working. This is the first operational review of this caliber in 40 years. We know there are parts that aren't working effectively. We're not using money as well as we could. Take the KPMG recommendations as a challenge for your department to be part of finding the solutions. And please be part of finding the solutions before we find the solutions when we open the budget in November, because you may not like what we find. So that is my debate. Oh, I'll support this
Well,
amendment.
you're supporting the resolution.
I
I'm
will,
just
but
trying
I
to
want
figure out
more.
where you were.
I want
Okay.
more too.
Okay. Would anybody else like to debate? I too would say I'd like to see something clearer about savings to council coming forward from our administration. I think the opportunities for saving have to be clarified, and I think we've known there's a problem with transit and efficiency for some years now. It's been identified in 2 consecutive reports, and I think we need, we're not transit experts, but we want to see efficiencies coming forward from transit. And we think those do need to be identified by our management, and I'd like to see those clarified. I hope this resolution is one that'll bring forward solutions to City Council so that we can begin to achieve those savings. I will support it one more time, but as Councillor Croson has said, if we don't come forward with some recommendations for operational savings from transit, we'll be looking at it a lot tougher in November. So I will support it on this occasion. Would anyone else like to debate? I'll ask Councillor Higgin to close.
Oh, that was some fire and brimstone there. No, thank you, and I want to offer my apologies here to Transit Department. Again, I like to try to get some of these questions out, and in light of the schedule we had today, I'm scribbling away this stuff till early this morning. So thank you for the answers provided at this time. Again, we want solutions, and I appreciate what Councillor Croson and Mayor Spearman has mentioned. It's especially in light of this 80%, 90%, whatever it is that is funded by taxpayers. This is something that we really want to do right. And again, I like answers right away, and I like to get solutions right away. But of course, this is a largely tax-supported part of our city budget, and so it's important that we definitely take the time, but we still do want results, and we want our questions answered. So I appreciate those that had commented before, and again, I would hope to have some of these answers for the Community Issues Committee meeting, which is great to have that. You've noticed it's changed a little bit from what was posted online to have this Community Issues meeting, and then a week later to have the vote at council. So again, I appreciate the information that's been received, and I hope that we receive more answers to the questions that we have, and with that, I'll call for the vote.
Okay, question's been called. All in favor? And online? Roll call, please.
Miyashiro in favor.
Carlson in favor.
Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you. We'll recall Deputy Mayor Kaufman and proceed to 6.4. Okay, next resolution is NMAX Center Governance Structure, sponsored by Deputy Mayor Kaufman. Whereas the approval of the 2019 to 2022 operating budget directed the city manager to conduct fiscal performance reviews and to identify opportunities for City Council to consider in its fiscal decision-making. And whereas Phase 1 of the Fiscal and Operational Performance Review dated October 31st, 2019 was provided to City Council, identifying several opportunities for consideration. And whereas the review identified opportunities for increased revenue generation and expenditure reductions related to the NMAX Center, and whereas City Council desires to reduce the reliance of taxation support in the delivery of operations at the NMAX Center, and whereas the presentation by the NMAX Center Operational Review Team to the Community Issues Committee dated May the 11th, 2020, identified 4 governance options for a venue such as the NMAX Center, and whereas the presentation also indicated multiple recommendations to increase the revenue for the NMAX Center, Therefore, be it resolved that the city manager be directed to present additional information on the presented governance options. Number 1, privately owned and operated, and number 2, city-owned, operated by private management, no later than September 21st, 2020. Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Members of council, you recall that we had a presentation on May 11th from the folks at the NMAX regarding the operational review. 4 options were presented. We really only got options and information focused around a particular point, but as council will recall from our penultimate CAO, that we had a conversation about the potential of looking for other options for the NMAX Centre. So this is about just gathering a little bit more information on privately owned and operated, as well as city-owned or operated by private management options for the NMAX, for the information to be back by September 21st. I'll either open it for questions or debate.
Are there any questions from council? I have one to the mover. There was a preference expressed for one form of recommendation, that there would be increased opportunities for revenue generation and additional and reductions in cost using the existing model. In the interim, before September, just for clarity, would you expect the current management of the NMAX Centre to continue pursuing those and implementing them?
City Manager.
Mayor Spearman, as you're aware, many of the events, and if not all of the events at the NMAX have been shuttered for the last period of time. So depending upon how and where the NMAX reopens, will determine whether we can start to move towards it. But I would expect that this resolution says, hey, look at these other models, and you identified that we brought back the recommendation and what's happening in the industry. So when we come back, we'll say, here's current state, here's option 1, here's option 2, and where we can look at efficiencies, obviously that's what we're here to do anyway. So
the purpose behind my question is just not to freeze administration for 2 months until something comes forward. So I just wonder if they would follow a path. This resolution doesn't stall them in pursuing that, while there might be other options reconsidered. So that was why I directed it to the mover.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to assume that in the process of coming to the conclusion that they came to in the presentation they did on May 11th, they have this information available. As city manager, members of council are aware, we've also some of us have been directly contacted by private industry about the facilities, so that information could certainly be shared with the city manager. It says no later than September 21st, so if they've done the work, if the information exists as it should, because it was supposed to have been a fulsome presentation, I would assume that this information will be back at the earliest possible convenience, so hopefully it shouldn't stall anything.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Vanden Heuvel.
Just to follow up on Councillor Kaufman's comments, if members of City Council have received information from any third-party provider, everything that has not yet been provided to the administration, in order to do a proper job, that information would be very helpful for it to be shared with us as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, any further questions? I see none. We'll move on to debate.
I've opened, Mayor Spearman.
Okay. Any debate? Everybody says ditto? Okay. All right. Any debate online? I hear none. I think the motion's self-explanatory. I'll ask the mover to close.
Question.
Question's been called. All in favor? And could you poll online, please?
Yeah, sure, yes.
Carlton, yes.
Okay. That is unanimous. Thank you. There are no bylaws today. We'll move on to inquiries. I have an inquiry with respect to taxes. Tax notices are going out, and we're beginning to be contacted by some residents who said, well, we thought taxes weren't going up, and now I got my tax bill, and my taxes are higher this year than last year. To the city manager or designate, what's the rationale, just for explanation, so councilors have that to respond to taxpayers?
Mayor Spearman, I've gotten a couple emails from communications while we're in council today, just putting together some sort of briefing for City Council. But yes, on May 11th, City Council eliminated the 1.82% tax increase for residents for 2020 on a one-time basis. And so, however, that's only one portion of the calculation. And it's on average, the tax bill is zero. But if there's been a change in your property tax assessment, that will impact your calculation of the municipal portion of your property taxes. So the total revenue for the city of Lethbridge did not change from property taxes from 2019 to 2020. And we look at that through the different categories, so non-residential, residential, and multifamily. And so we assume that the total revenue, for example, for multifamily remained unchanged. However, the assessment base of all the properties in the multifamily category did increase. And so when you take the total revenue divided by an increased base, you're going to see greater reductions than the zero for multifamily. However, with the non-residential and the residential, the assessment value dropped. So you're going to have total revenue for those categories the same, but over a smaller base, which would mean that potentially you'll see some slight increases in your property taxes compared to last year because your assessment has changed.
Okay, so some taxpayers will pay more, some taxpayers will pay less, but the city's revenue requirement remained unchanged as a result of the resolution, but individual taxpayers may see slight variations.
That is correct.
Okay, Councillor Croson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. My question is for the city manager. I've had some concerns expressed to me by people about the cemeteries and what the cemeteries are looking like. And one of the questions they have, I explained to them, we're moving staff around, et cetera, but they'd just like to know when the cemeteries might be expected to be mowed.
Councillor Croson met with the cemeteries manager late last week to talk about that exact issue. In addition, they also received their flower order. So the mowing, trimming for all of cemeteries is priority. They brought 2 additional staff back, recalled them today. So they're on it starting over the weekend and into this week, and hopefully we will catch up on everything as well as get all the planting done.
Councillor Higgin.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Croson, for bringing that forward. That was a similar question that I had. But in addition to that, I was out traveling around the community here on Sunday, and I noticed that multiple areas throughout the city have mowed where they can get on with the large mowers, but not whippersnipping around, I guess, the areas. And I'd measured once, and it just came just below my waist of where grass has grown up in this one school over on the north side. And so I'd got a question on it, and that's why I went over. Is this going to be somewhat similar? And I don't know if our city managers designate this would be ongoing, similar to that of the cemeteries, et cetera, as far as trimming the grass and in those areas?
Yeah, so in general, that's been driven, similar to the conversation this morning around opening washrooms and other things, by advice and ensuring that staff are operating in a safe environment. So as that continues to evolve and temporary staff or seasonal staff are recalled, those things will start to happen. But what we will do for council is put together a communication piece on that so you can explain that to folks that have got questions, but it is still evolving.
Thank you.
But we are working as well on a comms piece for citizens so we can explain where we are in that process and what they can expect to see.
And just to add to that, if I could, I know that there's a lot of the rinks are now, they're obviously not operating, so we don't have the summer activities going on at these rinks. And so a lot of these individuals actually transfer through to parks, et cetera. I don't know the background to it because obviously that's not my way of understanding. But what I'm curious to know is we haven't hired summer staff, or we've kind of delayed in hiring them. Is these other staff members, they're still out there, and we're trying to figure out, exactly when and how they're going to get to these projects, or is it just mitigating through, like as you said, Mr. City Manager, some of the COVID restraints that we've had?
Yeah, my understanding, it's been the COVID restraints. So how many individuals can you safely put in a vehicle? If it was a crewed vehicle that carried forward, can't do that now. But I'll get you a more fulsome answer. But to me, it's been described as COVID and safety of employees was the key issue in determining how we could move forward with those things, and where we would focus the limited staff we did have was based on priorities. But I'll try and get you a more fulsome answer of where we are. Yes, a cheat sheet.
I would appreciate that. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Further to what my two colleagues here, we must be getting the same types of phone calls, because I too had a lot of complaints about the cemetery. But I tend to go to the cemetery on a regular basis, and I would just like to add to that I went on Saturday, I'm going to say either late morning, early afternoon, and there was a crew there mowing the lawn, at least at Mountain View Cemetery. So it sounds like, Mr. Vanden Heuvel, your team's already out there and taking care of that. So that was good to see. But I have on that, and I should know this, but I don't. And I brought it to Mr. Vanden Heuvel's attention. I was walking by the two high schools on the west side, and I noticed that their fields, both Chinook and CCH, the grass was cut. Looked great, by the way, and people were out there and enjoying it. But the library, which is ours, the grass was not. So I don't want an answer, but I guess maybe is this something that, I know we tried this before, and some members that were here on council with me, council, I think the policy was that we cut grass every 7 days, and we tried to save money. We would do it every 10 days, and we got a bunch of phone calls because, boy, that was just the worst thing we could have ever done. So is this maybe an opportune time, or a time that maybe we should look at our grass mowing and who does it and that sort of thing? Because it seems to be, and especially with like what I just came across with the public library on the west side and the two schools, you got nice grass and then city-owned public library. So I'm just bringing that up because we're talking about it here. So at some point, maybe it would be helpful for council to at least know, or maybe we should revisit, if we do have a policy, what that is. So thank you.
Okay. Any further inquiries? I see none. Council updates. Councillor Crowson?
Thank you. Just a very quick one. I just want to remind my colleagues that this Thursday we have the Recovery Lethbridge meeting, and that each subcommittee is expected to bring their terms of reference, their KPIs, their committee structure. So hopefully they've all had their first meeting, or will have had it by June 4th. And we'll also be discussing communication and all that. So just to remind everybody, 1:30, June 4th, the next Recovery Lethbridge meeting.
Thank you very much, and that is a public meeting. Yeah, thank you. Good. I think I need an omnibus motion for the in-camera items. Okay. So the next step would be to go back in camera. Can I have a motion to go in camera, please?
So moved.
So moved by Councillor Kaufman. All in favor? Roll call online. Any opposed? I guess none. Okay, that's unanimous, going in camera. Okay, we'll take a few